Before we get into today's video, guys, I want to talk to you all a little bit about our sponsor. I mean, how else do you think I can afford awesome stuff like this little Bob Ross guy, this Bob Ross t-shirt, that Bob Ross painting back there, without having awesome partners and sponsors for our YouTube videos? So thank you so much to today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Surfshark is a virtual private network service that, as the name suggests, allows you to virtually browse the interwebs from anywhere on the planet. No matter what device you use to spend time on the internet, your tracking and personal information is incredibly public without the use of a VPN like Surfshark. Something as simple and public as your IP address can be used against you in many ways, which is where Surfshark comes in to protect you. I know that we're all gamers here, so I know for a fact that we've all visited some real shady websites to maybe download some Minecraft mods, or maybe when we're playing an online game, we've been threatened to be DDoSed once or twice. Surfshark helps prevent threats like these from ever happening by blocking malware and phishing attempts while browsing, or even keeping your IP secret while gaming. And even for the folks out there who maybe don't use public Wi-Fi or maybe use the internet purely for entertainment purposes, Surfshark can do something as cool as unlocking location-restricted content on stuff like YouTube and streaming services like Netflix. This feature can work on your TV, your tablet, your phone, basically everything, because Surfshark allows unlimited access on all devices through just one account. And of course, guys, if you use code Fineokay right now, you get 83% off and also your first 3 months free with Surfshark. And the coolest part is that it's also risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee if for whatever reason you don't enjoy the product. The links will be down in the description below for you guys to download it. And, thank you again to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Well, let's get right into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another tier list video. This is the part 2 of the item tier list that I'll be doing with Deathwalker. Yes, he is back once again. Both of us will be talking about all the items in the game right now. So keep in mind with this tier list, this was made for basically at the end of Season 7. But the thing about Season 8 is the only additional items added to the game were dominance and all the starter items. And obviously we already talked about all the starter items, so the only thing missing from this list is actually going to be dominance, which we'll talk about, we'll throw in there, and you'll just have to imagine that it's actually in the tier. So we have S+, S, A+, B, C, and then we have the shit tier. So this is going to be our tier list, and this is what we're going to talk about. So gonna be a lot of items to talk about. We're gonna glide right through it and hopefully have some fun. I asked for 2K likes on the part 1 to make this video, but the funny part is it was false advertising. We were gonna make this video no matter what, so just a little extra content for you guys regardless. So yeah, so let me unmute. What's up, Deathwalker? Welcome back to part 2.
Yo, thanks for having me in this wonderful video. Yet another tier list with your boy here, the official Fonzo family tier list guy. And I'll be back probably at some point soon if we're gonna do a skin tier list maybe or something. You know? Just call the tier list. Just call me in, bro. I got
Yeah, we should do every single tier list possible. Just have who has the best first ability in the game, and then we'll make a tier list based on that. That actually is a good idea. I just thought of that just now. Okay. But yeah. So yeah, once again, this is gonna be the part 2, and we're gonna try and talk about every item in the game, and give you guys our most objective view on each item. So without further ado, we're gonna start with the boots, and Deathwalker started out first in part 1, so I guess I can start part 2 out here with Ninja Tabi. So this is only bought on physicals, obviously. It is statted to hell. I mean, it has 25% attack speed on it. God, I think is it 100 mana or 200 mana or something? I think it's 100 mana. It's got power, it's got the movement speed, of course. This is honestly, I think, one of the most insane boots options in the game. ADCs buy it every single game just because of all the stat padding that it has basically on it. And then also, it just kind of, it makes Gods Without Steroids pretty good in the early to mid game because of all the attack speed. And the mana that you get from it as well is nice for the laning phase. So honestly, I would say S tier for Ninja Tabi. What do you think, Deathware?
Yep, I agree. S tier Ninja Tabi, maybe even S+, dude. I think these are the best boots in the game. Maybe tank boots compare, but I guess we'll see what we think about the other ones.
Let's throw it
But
in S+.
so strong.
I was tempted to do that as
Sure.
well.
Warrior Tabi. Well, this so Ninja Tabi, you see them in the store, and Warrior Tabi is Ninja Tabi at home,
Yeah.
basically. uh, it's just the sad brother, I guess. You have to buy it because you can't really use the attack speed too well. That's literally the only time you buy this. It's pretty rough situation for them. I mean, they're not bad by any means. Of course, they're still boots, pretty cheap, good power spike, but they're definitely nothing to write home about.
Yeah, I would say probably just like A tier. You know, just something that you probably have to buy on a lot of gods, just because you don't use the attack speed like you said, and it has 40 power on it, so it's good for like clearing the jungle early game or having like the scaling for certain matchups. But for the most part, these are kind of the stepbrother, the younger stepbrother to Ninja Tabi. So yeah, I'd say about A tier. You think A is pretty good?
Yeah, I was gonna say A or A plus maybe, just because they're still like pretty efficient for how much they give, like the stats, but they're not impressive.
Yeah. On the opposite end is Stellaria boots. I wouldn't say they're quite shit tier because I mean, when you do buy them, you do have the extra movement speed, which is kind of nice, especially on a map that's a little bit bigger. But they have fallen off so hard. They nerfed them, I think, a few times, honestly, and you don't really ever see these boots anymore anywhere for the most part. Sometimes you could see it in solo before, but now they're never bought. Jungle, people were buying this, but now no one ever buys them. In support, there's just no reason to go these boots over tank boots, because tank boots are just so much more cost efficient and give you more stats. So I'm thinking B or C, probably C. I don't think they're quite shit tier, because when you do buy them, you do feel that little bit of extra move speed, especially like out of base and stuff. But I think that they're just pretty unusable right now in their current state.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem with this item is it's been slightly over nerfed. Like the movement speed. I'm pretty sure they nerfed every aspect. By the way, they nerfed
Yeah,
the mana regen. I think they nerfed the movement speed. They nerfed the power. You used to see them before, obviously, but now there's actually just no point in buying them. The like, at least I don't see a point. I think the difference is like 4% movement speed, which, I mean, if you're really sacrificing what 30 power or something for 4% movement speed, yeah, is it really worth it?
yeah,
Probably not.
yeah.
I mean, most definitely not actually. So.
Yeah. Kind of I don't know. I think you talk about this, but I feel like kind of the same thing with the magic ones.
Yeah, no, same thing, same thing. Like it just doesn't give you enough, considering all you get is 4% movement speed. And what's funny as well is they give 10 MP5 if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's 15.
Uh, but 15,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. But the original boots give 100 mana anyways, and like just base mana is sort of comparable to MP5.
Hmm.
Obviously, 100 is nothing crazy, but it's roughly 2 spells at that stage of the game, and 10 MP5 at that stage of the game, you don't really have the most sustained ever, and you're kind of careful with your mana anyways. So I don't know, they don't really serve much of a purpose.
Yeah, the concept behind them is kind of cool. You get more movement speed, so you can like run around the map, and you get MP5, so you can stay on the map longer. But it just I think they've taken a huge backseat to all the other boots options, especially these two bad boys. I would say tank boots right now. You can buy them sometimes in solo on certain characters that base damage is like worth it, where just having that extra tankiness, like certain like characters like Arthur, Cocolin, even maybe you could like throw in like Osiris, some other characters. But honestly, tank boots as far as support role, they're bought there every single game pretty much, except for maybe on like Yamoja, and maybe if you're like playing a Cerberus pretty aggressive with like cooldown boots or something. But for the most part, these tank boots are insane, very very cost efficient, make you super tanky, give you CCR, give you 150 health. 150 health on 1500 item is pretty sick. 1500 gold item, that is. And I would say S plus. I don't know, best boots option in the game on in support and sometimes in solo.
Yeah, I agree with this. Plus, I mean, the only time you don't really buy this is if you're a damage dealer. But I mean, honestly, you could probably even buy it on some damage dealers and not feel too bad about it. But attack speed boots are obviously very strong, so you don't have to like resort to just some slight tankiness to drop so much DPS.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, whenever you buy them, you feel very good about them. You actually like really feel the tankiness.
Hmm.
And it's especially nice, as you said, like on some high base damage characters. But most of them also like really want to just kind of get in there, like Arthur, Coquelin. I think you can buy tank boots or say Guan Yu even
Yeah.
high base damage, and you want to get in there, so you're gonna make use out of that passive a lot. And there's CCR on it too, and oftentimes you die while in CC, and then starting the game with like a CCR is always kind of helpful.
Yeah, since boots are your first time every game and they're mandatory, you kind of can just. It's almost like Smite everybody starts the game with 20% CCR if you buy these every game, which is kind of funny. It's just like maybe just a thing in Smite now. But yeah, the magical boots are pretty much the same. In fact, maybe a little bit better than the physical, just because it's a support item, and most of the time in support you're playing Guardian, so they give the exact same stats apart from the magical power being different. But Honestly, both S plus, I think. But what do you think? What do you think about purple boots? I love these boots.
Oh, dude, these are like my go-to boots in on Guardian Solo right now. I
Hmm.
think. I mean, honestly, I think the only thing that's holding these boots back from being S plus is the mana. I actually think the mana is like something you really feel, the lack of mana as opposed to cooldown boots.
Hmm.
But other than that, I mean, these boots are just better in every way, in my opinion. Like, there's a lot of cooldown reduction items that you buy throughout the game, both mid and solo. Say if you play a Guardian solo, if you play Guardian solo, you also have blue buff. The 8% lifesteal, it might not seem like much, but it adds up, and you really feel it as opposed to having cooldown boots. Like,
Hmm.
and the additional 20 power, I don't think is really a big deal, but the 8% lifesteal, I think, makes all the difference. And pretty sure, unless you feel bad about the lack of mana, this is the go-to on every mage.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really see a point of buying cooldown boots apart from maybe if you have like a Book of Thoth build, so you get a little bit extra mana for like power, or maybe you're playing a super mana hungry god and you know that you're not going to be getting totems, then maybe you can consider cooldown boots. But it's not like cooldown boots are bad. Like if purple boots just weren't so good because they had 20 more power and the extra lifesteal, which you definitely feel that throughout the entire game, then I think cooldowns would be pretty good, and that's why I think cooldown boots are probably like A plus, whereas purple boots are S. So they're both good options, but I just I agree with you. In solos, especially purple boots, I think are just way better. And then in mid, I think you're still gonna be buying purple boots over cooldown boots most of the time. Um, but yeah, they're pretty
And
similar.
wait, just hold it there
Okay.
before we get into these next items. Look at this. Looks like magical boots are just straight up worse because the lifesteal boots are one below the attack speed boots, and the other all are all like the same on the same tier.
Yeah.
So something's not right. I think buff lifesteal boots and give them like 90 power or something, just so they're S plus to like
Yeah,
match with
yeah,
the attack
yeah.
speed boots.
I agree. To be fair, they do have this one. They can build that. Mids
True,
just need to start
true.
building this. No, please don't do that. All right, moving on to Aussie. This item. I think it's maybe your turn, but I feel like these were both kind of the same thing. So I'll just start here.
Yeah, no, just you go.
Okay, Aussie, honestly, it's got a lot of stats on it. They kind of like it was an item in the past that was built in like kin size builds. It's really only ever built in ADC because lifesteal in general really isn't that valuable outside of the ADC role. Even in jungle, I think at lower levels people kind of overvalue how good a lifesteal is. Um, a lot of the times you just rather have more damage to kill people quicker. You don't really need the lifesteal. Even when you're playing like an auto attack jungler, most of them don't even need lifesteal, like Kali, Baka, Nemesis. None of those really need it. So you're only ever seeing it in ADC, and right now, Dev Gloves are just kind of better option for lifesteal. If not that, then you're just going to go something like Leather Cow, which doesn't completely scuff your build. So you don't really need to go this. Honestly, I think this item's got the good stats, like it's got decent stats, but it's just a little expensive for those stats. But I think you can't really go that wrong with buying it in certain ADC builds. So I I'm tempted to throw it into A, but I think you can maybe argue B, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I would say A. I think as a standalone item, it's pretty strong. It's just that it's so much weaker than its competition in Dev Gloves and say Bloodforge for junglers, stuff like that.
Hmm.
That there's no real reason for buying it. That's not because the item's bad though. That's because the others are just better.
Yeah,
So I think A. It deserves A for sure.
it's kind of similar to what we were talking about the in the last video. Is like a lot of times certain passives sound cool, but you just kind of want to be stronger at the start of a fight or towards like the beginning of a fight. And Aussie kind of requires the passive requires you to get low, and it's not exactly a gimmicky passive that can help. Like that can be a good thing, kind of like how Berserkers works. But a lot of times, especially in the jungle, you'd rather just be like really strong in your first set of abilities. So it can kind of bring down the value of the item, but definitely some decent stats. Oh goodness, what do you think of Kins?
Ooh, chins. I mean, obviously disgusting. Like, one of the strongest items, like standalone items, I think, for DPS. It gives good stats. I don't think they're impressive. Like, it's just some good power and some attack speed, nothing crazy. But the passive is just so strong, dude. Like, it might be one of the best passives in the game, if not the best for DPS. Like, literally the only downside to this item, I think, is it doesn't give you more damage towards anything but gods. So
Yeah.
like technically DPS wise, you're losing DPS on fire and like towers and whatnot. But I mean, who cares?
I'm tempted to put it in S because I feel like S plus is maybe consider nerfing these items, but I don't. I think kin size is kind of maybe healthy for the game. It's a very very good item, but I think it's more around S where it's just really really strong, and I don't necessarily think it needs a nerf. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think it needs a nerf. I agree. I think it's very good for the game. I mean, it's just very strong, obviously, but I think we need stronger items like this, and that passive is nice for the game.
Yeah.
Like it keeps tanks in check, I think.
hmm a similar item in that regard is Executioner, which wasn't being bought towards the end of last season. They kind of nerfed it into the ground, but then they buffed it again, and it's pretty decent now. I would say it's probably A plus just because it has a lot of versatility. You see it sometimes in the jungle on certain like auto attack characters like Erlang, Nemesis, and if you go like a stone cutting plus Executioner build, you can really shred down objectives, and obviously that's very important on the conquest map. So it does have that versatility. Some people are buying an ADC role, and I can imagine next patch after they have nerfed kind of crit the fail not build, I think this item will be picked up a good bit more. And if you're going a double ADC, this is almost a necessary item because the shred that you get from this does work for all physicals on your team. So in the same vein that it works on objectives, so I would say probably around A plus. Definitely they buffed it back into relevancy. I think last season it was probably almost like C tier, B tier, but they definitely got it back into a good spot in A plus, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I personally love Xe. Honestly, it shreds a lot of prods. Obviously, it's annoying for tanks, but I think it's fun to have shred so that everybody that's physical does more damage to the guy. You can feel it as the hunter, but it's always nice that like say you're playing Kokolin and you have to fall back, but then maybe you could get a couple hits in on the tank and you're noticeably doing a lot more damage. I think it's always nice to have something like that, and same way like how void shit works, and when we get to that point, I guess.
hmm
I just like prot shred. I think it's very cool. I think it's very nice for the game, and this item in particular is just very strong right now. Doesn't need a nerf, obviously, but I like seeing it in builds personally.
Yeah. What about devs?
Devs, well, this is the go-to item for well, okay, wait, no, hold up, no, 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 no. It's not a go-to right now because everybody's going Berserker Shield, but without Berserker Shield, this is like the go-to lifesteal item. Uh, there's really not much about this item to say other than it has good stats for the price. Like
Yeah.
it just gives you power and lifesteal. That's it. It just enables a lot of builds.
Yeah, I'd agree. Would you say it's like A plus? I think maybe you could say S, but I think it's just I don't think it's really like that crazy. I think it's just a good item. Obviously, it has the weakness of you having to stack it in the early game, so you do have to worry about that. But
No, yeah, I would say A plus. Yeah, I think the only reason why it might seem stronger than it really is because it just enables a lot of builds. But that's not. I don't think that's necessarily the item being strong itself. It's just that the stats are really nice for what you are about to build.
yeah, yeah,
Like it's setting you up nicely.
yeah, it does synergize with the rest of the build pretty well. And I guess it kind of makes Bloodforge discussion a little bit awkward because I do think Bloodforge is better than Aussie, but I think it's a little bit worse than Dev Gloves. I guess Bloodforge does have the versatility aspect to it. You can build it in jungle, whereas you don't really ever build Dev Gloves in the jungle unless you're playing, I don't know, doing something crazy like a Apollo jungle and you're just going super greedy. But since it has that versatility, I think maybe it's in line in A plus. Bloodforge is a pretty good item, and in the ADC role specifically, you're only really ever going to see these items in ADC and jungle. Maybe if you're playing a physical mid, you could go Bloodforge. Just you don't have to stack in that early game, so you can fight around mid a little bit earlier. Um, but if you're ever building it in ADC, it's usually because your dev gloves were late and you don't want to have to worry about stacking them when you're already behind. Or if you just back with enough gold and you really just want to try and like push your pressure without having to worry about stacking, then I think maybe those two options. But for the most part, I would say just a weaker option than dev gloves and ADC, but it does have that versatility, so I'd say A plus.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much covered everything about Bloodforge. It's literally just the versatility, I think, that's kind of helping it keep up with the dev gloves. I mean, you mostly, again, see this in the jungle. This is like kind of a late pickup, which kind of fits the item too. Like, rather than going dev gloves and stacking it up, you can just late buy Bloodforge. And if you do happen to get a kill, that shield can actually be kind of a lifesaver.
Yeah, the passive is it does have a passive over dev gloves. Dev gloves doesn't really have a passive, so it does have that going for it. What do you think about Transcendence?
Uh, Transcendence. I've not been seeing this item too much lately. I mean, I buy it because I like the item. I think it's kind of nice to have a lot of mana, but at the end of the day, like this item, It's in my mind, this is literally just the worst like dev gloves.
Yeah.
It's rather than giving you a lot of lifesteal, it gives you a lot of mana, but mana is not that valuable.
Hmm.
It does give you more power though, and it can like kind of synergize with some other mana items if you choose to go for them. But there's not much point to this item right now if when you keep buying dev gloves and go crit. But even next patch, say if you don't go crit, you still probably don't want to go transcendence on anyone, but maybe like Cupid. But even on Cupid, you could go dev gloves and it feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. You can buy it in the jungle on certain characters. I think on Bastet it kind of makes a lot of sense. There's maybe some characters in other roles that you would maybe want it on. Maybe if you're playing like a hunter mid, you could look to go it on certain like ability based characters, like maybe like AMC or something. But like you said, mana really isn't an issue these days. There's just a lot of access to mana in your items. Also, there's like totems. You know, there's just a lot of ways to make sure that you're healthy in mana. So it has just taken kind of a back seat, especially when it comes to ADC builds. Dev gloves is just kind of the go-to, and if not that, then you're going like leather cow berserkers or leather cow, some sort of build like that. I think another thing to talk about is, since we're about to talk about it as well, is that dominance. Transcendence has like traditionally been like the ADC, like power item, damage item if you're not going lifesteal. But dominance kind of gives you all the pen that you want in an ADC build, and also gives you mana in MP5. So even if you were worried about mana, it kind of also takes a backseat to dominance, which is pretty strong as well for ADC. So I'm tempted to throw it in B. I think you could argue A, and I think maybe the general player base probably still like buys this item and feels okay with it. But I think I'll put it in B just because I do think it's taken so many backseats to all these other items. So um,
Yeah, I agree with the B. I
yeah.
agree. Like it's just such a low it's so low on the priority list that I mean, is it even good at this point? Honestly.
Yeah. Heartseeker up next. So this, when it was first released, was absolutely broken. It had flat pen on it. They actually changed it, and it kind of synergizes with the item. The item synergizes with itself a little bit better now because it's supposed to do percent health damage, which is good usually for tanks. And then now it also has percent pen on it, which is good for tanks. So that helps with that. But the problem is this is more of like a jungler item than anything, and junglers usually are hitting carries who don't have a lot of health and a lot of pros. So it's, I think, fallen off a little bit because of that. But I mean, you can't really go wrong with this in a build. Solo laners can build it as their like one damage item on certain warriors or assassins. I do think maybe it's around A plus, just because once you do buy it, you do feel pretty strong with the stats that it gives you in that passive. But it has been nerfed quite a bit, so I think you can maybe even argue it being A. But I would say it's still probably around A plus.
I think the A plus fits it nicely because like you could basically build it on any physical character and it feels pretty good. Like you could actually, if you play physical support and you've like covered your defense options, you could buy Heartseeker and it feels nice.
Yeah.
This is just, I think this is the main item you want to buy if you're looking to buy a late damage item on a tank.
Mm-hmm. It's like this
And
and
I think that alone is like boosting it quite high up.
yeah.
You don't necessarily have to buy this on a hunter or anything. Like not even a jungler, but just having an option to buy it. And whenever you do buy it, even if you don't really necessarily need it, it feels good. So
Yeah. As like a pure damage item, it's like this number one for like solo laners, at least this, then maybe brawlers or Erendite, and then whatever kind of you want from there. Maybe stone cutting on like an auto attacker. But speaking of auto attack items, should we just go ahead
oh
and...
wait, before you go into this, we are missing
Oh yeah,
dominance.
yeah, good call, good call.
Dominance is not on the list, sadly, because this is from season 7. But I think dominance. I don't think it's quite up there with Heartseeker just because it's an ADC only item. It's definitely better than Transcendence though, so I would just put it in A. It is actually just an ADC only item. I don't think I've ever seen it on a jungler. I don't think I'll ever see it on a tank, anyways. Stats are decent for the price, and it's basically like the auto tech version of Titan's Bane.
Yeah, basically, and I would say it's probably A, just kind of in line with like Aussie, a little bit better than Trans, a little bit worse than Heartseeker because of the lack of versatility. But it does kind of allow for certain ADC builds because you can get so much auto attack pen. And I think next patch especially you will see a little bit more of it just because the fail not wind demon build has kind of been nerfed. So I think ADCs will mess around a little bit more with dominance than they were before, just because the crit was so broken with berserkers. Um, but on the opposite end of that, I think we could talk about Atalanta's, which they took away the percent, not all the percent pen. They took away 10% of it, so now it's only got 10% pen on it instead of 20%. This was the go-to ADC like pen option last season. But now that there's dominance in the game, now that Executioner is once again good, now that Berserkers is kind of like a viable option for ADCs as well, I think that honestly this is a shit tier item. The passive that you get from it requires you to get kills or assists, and once again, I just think in general it's almost always better to just be stronger in the initial engage of a fight or the initial 1v1. And now that the stats are a little bit worse because they nerfed it, I think that this item is pretty, maybe you could say C tier just because it still has like, it still's got okay stats on it, but I would say C tier or shit tier. What do you think?
I'd say shit tier, dude. This
Yeah.
item, there's actually no point in buying it. Like, you could buy traveler shoes. At least you kind of feel good about them in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
way, Like at least you're fast out of base or something. Like, but this is just trolling. Honestly, it provides nothing. The stats are really bad actually for the price, and the 10% pen. I mean, everything nowadays has at least 10%. I feel like that's it. Uh, coupled with the bad stats and the bad passive, 10% pen. Yep, no, I'm not buying that.
Yeah. Honestly, you could probably just put Heartseeker in a build that you would want Atalanta's and get more power. You don't get attack speed, but you don't really need that these days. Then you also get a nice passive. So even on ADCs, I think it would always be better. Of course, if you're not going something like dominance, but Ichabod.
Ichabod, I think this is a pretty decent item. I don't see it too much. I feel like it just doesn't really have a place. That's its problem. I don't think it has too much of an identity. This is like the perfect dual item, I guess, but
Yeah.
uh, like it has decent stats, obviously. I think just across the board, it's a good item. You can't really say it's bad, but it just doesn't really have a place. At least I've never really seen people buy it in a comfortable way. Like if you're committing to a chin size build, you don't have room for this. If you're committing to a crit build, you don't have room for this. Like, what build do you fit this in?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and it's like at the time that you would buy it in ADC builds, after you get your lifesteal and your boots, it's pretty easy for the enemy ADC to just kind of avoid the 1v1 or like bait you into those like because the idea behind it, I guess, is that you would win 1v1 matchups into their ADC or maybe an auto attack jungler. But it's really easy to just play around that in the ADC role specifically. I think maybe it's a little bit underbought in like the jungle or maybe solo late game into like an auto attack heavy comp. But at that point, you'd probably just rather have Frostbound as a solo laner, and also at that point, maybe Witchblade. Um, and they also don't stack next patch. So I think this item actually got even a little bit worse going into the next patch. So I would say probably around B. And even if you rush this in ADC, let's say you rush this in ADC and really try to force the 1v1, well, then you wouldn't really have lifesteal. So I think, yeah, just that it just can't really be bought over the other options. So probably B. I think as an item, when you just look at it, you probably think, hey, this is actually kind of like A. This is like an A item, but I just don't think it's really like that purchasable, on Conquest. Um, Obo was insane last season. Now that crit's like been a little bit back in the meta, it's taken a bit of a back seat once again. But next patch, crit's being nerfed, and people are probably going to go kin size a little bit more. And kin size and Obo is a really, really sick combo, especially if you get your percent pen, which obviously Obo works really well with. Just like getting a ton of damage throughout the team fight with the lightning. It's also really, really cheap for 40% attack speed. Now, you don't necessarily need a ton of attack speed just because Ninja Time Bite gives you a lot, and there's just a lot of access to that throughout all of your items. But honestly, I would say A+. If we were talking about last season, I would say S, but I think right now, and we'll have to see how kin size comes back into the meta. For now, I think probably A+. What do you think?
I mean, we're definitely gonna see this item get purchased a lot from next patch onwards. I guess speaking of now, like probably A+. This is basically what Ichabod wishes it was, I think.
Let's throw it in S.
In
It's
terms
S.
of yeah, no, I think it's incredibly strong. It in my mind, this item is potentially even better than like crit items, just because of the amount of damage it has the potential to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing that is holding it back, I think, from say S+ is because it does have a condition where like chin size is like you just hit them, it applies. Crit, you can crit whatever you want. There's just a chance of it not happening. And this is like very specific after 4 autos, and then it has to bounce between people. So the condition is like kind of holding it back from being the best item ever.
Yeah.
But it's fun, and I like people. I like it when people use it. I think it's very nice, and it feels good to have.
Yeah, it can also kind of fix comps that don't have a lot of AoE if you go like an Obo. kind of punish people for grouping up, even as a hunter. So just very, very good and all around. Silver Branch, kind of, I would say it's not the worst item in the game. I think it actually can be fit into some builds, especially, I mean, you and I have talked about it a bunch. There's just so much attack speed in the game. And if you have like a steroid hunter and you still go for like a kin size oboe build, you're going to be overcapping attack speed. So you do have that passive benefit from Silver Branch. It also has 10% pen on it, so it's kind of like a better Atalanta's just because it actually gives you a little bit more than Atalanta's would, and kind of actually has a passive. But you're not going to fit it into every build, and I don't think it's an item that you can just buy every game, so I would probably put it in B for that reason. It's more of a niche item. In those scenarios, I think it can do decent, but it's not like Aussie where you could buy every game and feel at least decent about it. I think you kind of want it to have a good amount of attack speed with it.
Yeah, I think as a standalone item, this item's actually pretty bad. But luckily, it does combo well with a lot of things. This is probably like your 7th item. Like this is where you replace boots, and you're like, oh, I have way too much attack speed. I guess I'll just buy Silver Branch. Like it's not a crazy item by any means, but it has a lot of potential. I think, especially with the amount of attack speed you have currently, like it can turn out to be some mad DPS. I think.
Yeah, especially if you go a kin size build, like you said before, you actually lack a little bit of damage on objectives, and if you have a ton of attack speed, then throw a Silver Branch in late game, you get so much power from the item that it actually helps you do objectives a little bit quicker. So it's kind of nice for that reason. What do you think of Toxic?
Toxic, but this item was actually a meme initially. I remember, but
Yeah.
people kind of. I think it did get buffed a lot, to be fair, but people kind of saw the value in it. It's by no means insane, but I think it does the job pretty well. I like to buy this on auto attack characters, like when I either need anti heal, but I already have pestilence, so like I'm just trying to get more. Or sorry, auto attack soul laners specifically, not all auto attackers. Or this is like a good replacement for when you have Ninja Tabi and you feel like you kind of need the attack speed to proc Deathstall or whatnot. I think this item synergizes really well with other items. It counters a lot of the healing, which is super popular right now. And it has kind of decent stats, not crazy, but good enough, and it feels kind of nice to have.
Yeah, I'd probably say A tier. I really like this item in solo, especially just because it's hard to get access to flat pen these days, and flat pen's really good for killing carry. So whenever I buy this item and I start auto attacking like a mid laner and ADC, it feels like probably the highest DPS item for solo laners just because it removes their lifesteal option a little bit, obviously, and then also gives you that flat pen and attack speed, which is just crazy for hitting them. But it's just hard to fit in a lot of builds just because it doesn't really make you tankier. It only gives you 100 health, and you know, sometimes you just rather have like a tainted breastplate for your anti-heal, or just like a contagion or pestilence, since those actually make you tankier. But I do like this item, and I think you could build it in almost every game that there's healing and feel pretty decent about it. So I would say probably A. Just sitting around there.
Yeah, I think A.
Whereas Poison Star, the base stats after, I mean, when this thing came out, it was the most frustrating thing, especially for us solo laners, because you would like run at their ADC and they basically have a 15% damage reduction with a crit build, and it also slowed you, so it was like a frostbound / damage reduction item that was just ridiculous. But they kind of nerfed the base stats into the ground, and you don't really ever see it even in the crit builds. They kind of would just rather have like a wind demon, so they have percent pen, and then you know, maybe they ran out their build with like a little bit more pen or a little bit like a kin size or something. It's really hard to go just straight up crit. If you are going straight up crit, I think you can go this just because it reduces, like, I don't know, if people are still buying Thorns, it reduces Thorns damage a little bit, and it does have that like 1v1 aspect to it. But I would say probably B tier. I think the passive is still valuable, so you can still see it maybe sometimes, but the base stats have just kind of been nerfed to the ground.
Yeah, not just the base stats, by the way. The passive has kind of been nerfed to the ground. I think with the release of Season 8, this passive went from 15 to 10% damage reduction.
Oh, really?
So across the board, yeah, this item is
Goodness.
just way worse than it ever was.
Maybe C tier then.
I like, I mean, the base stats aren't even that bad, I don't think. I think they did do some changes to it to like justify buying it outside of the passive, but I don't think it's worth it when you compare it to the other crit items, anyways. And yeah, the passive has just been murdered. Like both the stats and the passive has just been absolutely butchered. I think this item is way too weak right now.
Okay, well, I'm happy it's down there. Hopefully they just change it instead of buffing it. That's one of the few items in the game that I actually don't think is necessarily healthy for the game, but Actually, the opposite of that. I think Shuriken is actually kind of a cool item. What do you think of it?
Ooh, I think Shuriken's actually really nice. They did a good job, I think, with the changes. They buffed a lot of its stats. I think it's a little underpurchased, maybe just underappreciated in general.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that it's not like cookie cutter DPS when you go Shadow Steel. Every single ADC player, I feel like, wants cookie cutter DPS. You know, like whatever
Yeah.
is the very highest DPS, that's what they'll build. But this doesn't do that. This provides some utility, and if it provides utility, ADC players don't even see the item. I think they like it's not in their shop.
Yeah. It's not
So
purchasable for them.
I don't know, a little underappreciated, I think, and it's sad to see because I think it's like a nice addition to anti-heal. But I don't know. I don't know what they could do to this item to like not make it bloated, but still have people buy it.
Yeah, it's another one of those items that maybe is a little bit hard for ADCs to feel the impact of, just because they just want to see those big numbers, and it doesn't quite give you the big numbers, but it does have that utility on the passive. And healing is prevalent, so it's just kind of like in that B tier where it's a nice niche counter item. Um, at the end of the day, it's also still kind of competing with Toxic Blade, because with Toxic Blade, it gives you movement speed, attack speed, and 15 flat pen, which is kind of comparable in DPS to an item that just gives you crit and a little bit of attack speed and power. Like, obviously, you're gonna crit a little bit more, so that's gonna be more DPS. But Toxic Blade it has some other stats that you kind of value as an ADC as well. So they're kind of competing with each other just a little bit. But at the end of the day, it can round out a crit build. So um, speaking of crit, Wind Demon, extremely strong right now. Did they actually nerf it going into the next patch? I know they nerfed Berserkers and
Nope,
Failnaught,
nope,
but
they didn't. They
okay,
didn't.
so
I think this is S. Yeah.
yeah, I would throw it in S. So this is like your quintessential crit item right now. Gives you attack speed, gives you movement speed on the passive. Obviously, gives you the crit chance, which you want. And the big thing, the crazy thing, once they split up the percent pen on physicals, is they gave percent pen to a crit item. So this item kind of you can't go wrong with purchasing this. The only thing is, if people are going to be going like a kin size Obo build next patch, it's kind of weird to just go a single crit item. So they're going to have to figure out how they want to do that. But this item is still very, very strong, especially on its own. Just if you just look at the stats, it's definitely an S tier item, and it makes the crit build. The only weakness the crit build had before, which is not having pen, is gone these days.
Yeah, well, this item actually gives like I think every single physical stat possible. I mean, it even gives movement speed. It gives attack speed. It gives crit chance. It gives pen. It gives power, and it gives movement speed. It's missing lifesteal, I guess. Like, they can add some lifesteal on everything.
Oh my goodness, that's
I mean,
crazy.
I think I think that alone kind of describes the item well enough.
Yeah.
Like it's just got it all. And the only problem is, yeah, like as a standalone item, the crit isn't reliable, so you're not gonna get all the stats ever. But it's still probably the single best crit item in the game, I think.
Yeah. It's, now that you mention all the stats, it's weird to think of that versus something like Rage. What do you think of Rage?
I think Rage might be purchased a little bit more with these new changes coming up. It's either Rage, Deathbringer, or Shadow Steel, I guess. But
Yeah.
I don't see people buying Shadow Steel. There's no way. I mean, I think Rage. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. It's just enabling crit builds. That's what this item does. It does a good job with it, but it does require you to get kills. So, like this item on its own, maybe not the hottest ever, but if you do get rolling with the kills and you get it stacked up, I think it actually enables a lot of options. Like if you go Rage and just one other crit item, you you can still go for you could probably still go for Chins or like Oboe and feel fine about it, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, the only awkward part is maybe if Executioner is purchased more, there's a lot of options, I guess, and maybe some of them are a little bit more mandatory depending on how the builds like shape out in the next patch. But I do think Rage maybe will be the replacement for Failnaught now that Failnaught kind of gotten hard nerfed, and I think it's probably just around A tier. I think it also has that versatility where it's bought in the jungle a little bit on certain characters like Mercury, and maybe like if you're going like a crit build on some other character. But yeah, for the most part, kind of just like A tier. And honestly, I would say Deathbringer is kind of the same, kind of just like an A tier crit item. I mean, Deathbringer itself is like a huge DPS item, especially if you get the crit to back it up, so you can actually get the extra damage on your crits. But the thing about it is that like if people are buying Thorns a good bit, and obviously if you're just critting more, you're going to be doing more damage to yourself, which Deathbringer is not too great for. And then also it probably going to take a bit of a backseat as well to like a kin size build next patch, and it's really hard to fit a kin size and a Deathbringer into a build. So A tier just because on its own it is a decent item, but um, yeah, it's just kind of hard to fit into a lot of builds.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of rate Rage and Deathbringer the same. Like Rage is the more crit enable item, Deathbringer is the more just straight damage item. I think one problem with these two items right now is I think the bar has been raised so high in crit items and what makes them good. Like, I mean, just look at Wind Demon. Like,
Yeah.
this is just the bar is sky high, and like Wind Demon and Deathbringer, like they're comparing heights with like me. Uh, it's really tough to get a good replacement for Failnaught now because Failnaught gave so many stats as well, and it enabled other people to crit.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think these items are necessarily bad, but like kind of how Asi is compared to Devos, like there's really no point in getting them because they're just straight up worse than its competition.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because it's supposed to be like the DPS crit item, but Wind Demon definitely makes you do more damage to like everybody that you're hitting just because it has the attack speed and the pen on it. So um, maybe the crit numbers are a little bit bigger, but yeah, the stats are just like pretty rough compared to the other items. What do you think of Jotuns?
I think the new buff actually kind of made Jotuns very, very nice. I think this item just fell slightly short before in terms of stats. I think if you do like a mace starter build, I don't know what junglers start these days. I'm pretty sure it's like somewhere along with the maces and like shifter, shield, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is probably the second mace in line, right after Brawler's Beatstick. I wouldn't necessarily rate Jotuns lower than Brawlers though. I think they're like pretty much the same item. It's just that one you need it for anti-heal, and the other one is like if you don't need anti-heal and you want some CDR.
Yeah, and certain characters really like Jotuns, especially in the jungle. Just characters like Thor, Bastet, and these characters that function really well with CDR and getting their ults on cooldown a lot quicker. But yeah, I would say it's A plus. The buff to now having 50 power definitely helped it out a lot, and I think that honestly maybe if we want, I feel like all the maces are just like A plus. They're all like pretty good. They're all really good damage
Yeah,
options.
I would actually put Crusher A. I think Crusher
Okay.
is slightly underwhelming because stat wise, it's actually the same as Aussie, for example. Like it gives the same pen. It gives I think a little bit less attack speed, and it gives like 5 more power.
Okay.
So in my mind, every time I think of buying Crusher, I'm like, but like Aussie has the same stats. Like, why am I gonna buy
Yeah.
Aussie, right?
Yeah.
Basically. So I'll just buy one of the other maces because they actually have nicer passives or just stats in general. Like Jotuns with the CDR is way nicer than just like 20 damage on Crusher, or the anti-heal is way nicer. But yeah, I mean the maces are very, very comparable, very similar. But I mean that's what they're here for anyways. Like they're just straight up power, pen, and something else.
Yeah, basically they all enable junglers to kind of do damage to mages or actually be able to kill ADCs. So they all function kind of the same way. It just kind of depends on the game and the character that you're playing, which one you really want. Um, and then Titan's Bane, dude, I actually think Titan's Bane is really strong. The problem is like Serrated Edge now has 20% pen on it, so that's kind of an option for either auto attackers or maybe not even auto attackers, just ability based characters that kind of like the stats that it gives. It just has a ton of stats on it. Titan's Bane really only gives you power and percent pen, like that's literally all it gives you. But it does have that benefit where you can ogre cat pen on your first ability. So I think it's good in that regard, but it's more of a niche item. So I think in the items or in the scenarios that you do build it for that percent pen and like on junglers, let's say they have like a Sentinel's Embrace, say they have like an ADC who has Berserkers, maybe their mid laner threw in like a Warriors or a Sundering Axe into their build. Throw in a Titan's Bane into your build, and you're going to be able to one-shot anybody on the map, and it'll feel pretty good. So I think in those scenarios, it kind of makes it a pretty good item. So I would say it's A, even though it is a little bit more, it's a little bit more niche than the other maces.
Yeah, I mean, I actually do rate it the same as Crusher pretty much. Like, I like this item a lot. I think it's pretty good, but as you said, like, it just falls short compared to its competition, I guess. Like, the percent pen options for junglers are pretty limited, and the choices are obvious.
Yeah.
and this one just doesn't really have the stats to back it up. But I mean, it does. It's not that it feels bad though. Like I think it's pretty good and it does its job pretty well. And you can definitely feel the passive too. So.
Mhm. Just
Ooh.
kidding.
No, that's. I mean, I don't know where I'd put this. It's B or C probably,
I
because
feel like
like the
C.
item itself, it's not the worst ever. You know, you're not trolling like, but the stats are just horrible. This item only serves one purpose: is to just speed up your jungle clear. I don't see this item ever purchased in solo lane. I mean, I just yeah. I mean, not even in my dreams, I don't see this item in solo lane.
It's
Yeah, in the jungle,
fun to
you
mess
can only
around
buy
with,
it on
but
I guess. In the jungle, it's only useful on certain characters. Even on those characters, you could decide not to go Golden Blade, and you're probably gonna do fine. This item right now just doesn't really serve much of a purpose outside of speeding up your clear, which doesn't need help to begin with.
yeah, basically every jungle on the jungle camp on the map is pretty easily killable. And if it's not easily killable, then you're either building wrong or playing a wrong character or something. So before it had that benefit where if you played a character that was really good at clearing and you bought this, you actually were so fast at clearing that you would just hyper farm the map and either get ahead, allow you to gank a little bit quicker and stuff like that. But I think now it's just, after the nerfs to it and just kind of like the meta doesn't even fit the characters that maybe would want to buy this. Like you don't really see a lot of Bach or Mercury, any of those things these days. Um, it's just pretty horrible. The only thing I can say about it is that it's one of the only few items in the game that still has 10% movement speed on it. Actually, it might be the only item in the game with 10% movement speed on it still.
It is.
So,
Actually,
so that's kind of funny. I think they're like, well, this item is we've nerfed all the other items with movement speed, but since nobody buys this item, let's not do it to this one. So yeah, it's probably C tier, and you do have that benefit of clearing a little bit faster. So I don't think it's quite shit tier, um, but yeah. Moving on to Fatalis, Haste of Fatalis. Just like a niche item, you only buy this on characters that need to stick to people that can't already stick to people, like Kali, maybe Baka, but even Baka you don't necessarily need it on. And I would say it's just B because it's really niche and you only build on certain characters. Even characters that you could buy it on, like for example, like Vamana, or I don't know, any really auto attack jungler. There's other options that will give you movement speed that maybe are just a little bit better for you. And honestly, in my opinion, in the current meta, it's actually pretty easy to stick to people with auto attack characters. So even like a Vamana, I'd rather just have a Toxic Blade on if I needed it, or I would just like throw a Frostbound into a build with him, and it would feel a little bit better as far as the health you get from it. So I would say it's B. Obviously, unlike on Kali, it's S plus, but as a general item, I think it's just gonna be.
Yeah, I feel like the Fatalis effect kind of fell off. Maybe because I don't know. I don't know if it's because we just don't really have many effects like it, or is it just because people feel like they don't really need it anymore. Like before, people felt like this thing was like the best thing ever, right? Like that you could stick to people as long as you want. But right now, I feel like if you just have one movement speed item, you're probably gonna stick to them. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
you have stone cutting sword, you're probably gonna stick to them anyways because you're faster. It's not like autoing 2 times is gonna put you in Africa and he's in Paris.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. This item it's also really bad stat wise, and yeah, the effect just kind of fell off in terms of like just how Smite gets played. Both
Yeah.
that and Golden Blade like just died. It used to be kind of the go-to in old Smite, but right now people realize like what the hell is the point of these items?
Yeah, something I also thought about is that since at least at like high level play, if carries are going upgraded shell, first of all, auto attackers are a little bit worse in general. Like you don't see a lot of Baka or Pele's in the late game doing that well because of upgraded shell. But if you have Fatalis on a character and they have upgraded shell, basically all you're doing is sticking to them so they can hit you like a little bit like faster, a little bit easier because you're staying on them while there's an upgraded shell on them, so you're not even actually hitting them. So that's another reason Fatalis has kind of fallen off, just because that playstyle in general has fallen off a little bit. Um, and again, I think now that we're like going into these items as well, I think these options are just better for you anyway, just because they give a lot better stats.
Oh yeah, Serrated Edge. This might actually be the single best percent pen item in the game, like with a lot of percent pen
Yeah,
in terms of stats. It is pretty pricey though. That's the only downside, and you're never gonna see this item early, I don't think. But I don't know, it's pretty insane. It actually feels so damn good when you have it. the passive is slightly awkward on some characters, but I think the stats are good enough to cover up for it anyways. I would put it an A plus.
Yeah, I agree. It's just got so many stats on it. They've done this with a lot of items that they've added to the game and wanted to be good. They kind of just throw a bunch of stats on it. And we were talking about Titan's Bane before, where it only has power and percent pen, whereas this item has like lifesteal, it has movement speed, it has like actual like crazy passive. Although the passive is kind of hard to make work it, but it just has so many things for it that yeah, I agree that's A plus. And after the stone cutting buff, I would say that this item's probably S. I mean, it's just a cheap item. You get 30 flat pen from it if you stack it up. 50 power, 7% movement speed, which is really good on any auto attack character that wants to stick to people and just do a lot of damage. It's good on objectives. It can be a greedy soul lane item. It could be like your only damage item on some auto attack characters like a Bologna, or even like you could throw this on like a Cuckoo build and you would feel pretty good because you would just be slapping so hard with it. I honestly think this item is really, really sick now after they buff the price of it, and it's just pretty cheap. I think it's $23.50 if I'm not mistaken. For everything that you get from it is really, really good in my opinion. I would throw it S.
Yeah, I would say S. I mean, honestly, I wonder. Like, every time I look at this item, I always like question myself. Like, why am I not buying this more often? In
Yeah,
solo lane, you know?
first item stone cutting in
Yeah,
solo is probably like not even kidding good. It's probably good.
yeah, probably pretty good. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's pretty insane. I was like maybe debating even putting it S plus, but I guess it's not like bloated. It's just very, very good, right?
Yeah,
I think it definitely deserves S.
S plus.
S plus, sure. I mean, I don't know.
Let's
Like
do it.
it might be like the single best like physical item in the game, and only melees can buy it. But I swear to God, when people like if people start buying this on like ability on like Tsukuyomi, dude, you buy this like it's probably gonna work.
Yeah, it probably
I
will.
swear to God, this item is insane.
It literally has 20
Uh,
more pen. Obviously, there's a condition where you have to auto attack them, but 30 flat pen. I mean, it's 30 reduction actually, which is arguably more valuable in some scenarios. So yeah, let's throw an S plus. You could probably say S, but let's just do it for fun. Hydra. What do you think of Hydras?
Hi, just Jesus Christ, dude. Dude, this item was actually so strong like a couple seasons ago. Everybody was complaining about it, but now you find it very hard to even remember this item exists. I think.
Yeah.
Like it's not even that bad. It's just that the identity of the item is just so dead in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and probably in a lot of other players' minds. Like this item's identity is to boost your auto after every cancel, but like now when you think about auto canceling, like you first thing that comes to your mind is Bumba's hammer, probably not Hydra's.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Stat wise, not that bad. You're comparing it to like a Jotun's, I guess, but it is just straight up worse than Jotun's stat wise. And then the passive has been to some degree killed, but it's just lost its touch, I think. So I think B or A probably.
Yeah, I think it's hard to fit into builds as well because you kind of, you have boots and then you have your starter item upgrade, so you kind of only have 4 slots, and you need to get your pen and the other items. And it just compared, like if you just compare the stats to all the other options that you have, it just lacks in stats completely. I think one benefit to it is that it's a little bit cheaper than maybe some other items, and I think you can maybe purchase this on like Hunbats or Thanatos, and you'd feel pretty okay with it. But I think people in general kind of realize that if you just have items with more stats, the passive from Hydra isn't as valuable because you're just hitting hard always. Like if you have like 2 maces, a serrated edge, a Boomba's hammer, and boots, like you're just always hitting harder with your auto attack cancels than like relying on the passive from Hydras. So yeah, I think it's just kind of fallen off for that reason. And then moving on to Malice, I don't know. I think maybe this item's maybe under purchased. It's another one of those items that obviously it doesn't, the utility from the passive you don't necessarily notice right away. Like it's not like, oh, you just see like a bigger number. Instead of having a 600 crit, you have an 800 crit or something like that. But the cooldown you get from it and the passive, I think maybe is a little underappreciated. Now it is a little bit awkward because you're building this most of the time. Like if you want to build this in the ADC role, a lot of ADCs don't necessarily need cooldown reduction, and sometimes they just want to be hitting a little bit harder. But I think maybe it's underbought in like jungle, and I think maybe some crit builds in the jungle maybe are a little bit more viable than people give it credit for. With like a stone cutting build with like Wind Demon and Malice, you're gonna be able to 1v1 anyone on the map for the most part as a jungler. So I would say it's A. Kind of, I think maybe underappreciated. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think this item is really unappreciated. I mean, I love the item. I used to buy it a lot. Like whenever I'd play Hunter, I'd buy this item. I'd buy like Rage, Malice, and then like something I don't know. But I think it's pretty fun, and I think the use of it can be good. But yeah, like the downside of it is it's just the stats. I just don't think are impressive. Like as I said again, the bar has been raised so high with crit that just having power and crit is nobody's happy anymore with just power and crit.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely just need attack speed, lifesteal, movement speed on your crit items nowadays. Otherwise, they're not good. I think.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from Malice, but it's just in a position, or like just in like a timeline, I guess, in Smite where crit items have to be absolutely bloated. Otherwise, nobody really wants them.
Yeah. I agree. Soul Eater B.
Ooh, so I mean, I actually thought the old Soul Eater was better. Like the one that gave you more power and mana. I thought that one was better than this current one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't really understand what they're trying to do with this current one. Really, like it has pen, but then it gives you less power.
Hmm.
But then it gives you cooldown reduction, but then it doesn't have the mana. Like it's what why we're all like it feels like none of it really makes sense on this item. They did make it like slightly easier to stack with the price decrease, like whenever that change happened. And also with what did they do?
Well, they made the
Oh
blue
yeah, they
buff.
increased the passive, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the blue buff
Like
having the phantoms actually helps it out a little bit, so that's kind of nice. But
true. I don't know, but this item is kind of dead in my mind. By the time you stack it up, like having another item was probably better anyways. I
yeah,
feel like the only time I ever feel this item is good is if I like slightly poke but don't really commit, and then he heals it up, and then it's like wow, dude, he healed up. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I see Tyr do that all the time, but Wukong, dude, Jesus
yeah.
Christ, man, how did he heal up my like one ability poke? I don't think it's very good. Yeah, I think B is where it belongs.
Yeah, the only reason I'm not putting it in C is that unlike Wukong or Kama, it is viable still, and it's kind of nice on them. Just because you get like that percent pen can be kind of nice for trading in solo when they go like a defense item first, can help a little bit, but um, it is very very niche, and it's really only you can't really build it in. You can build it in jungle, but it's a little bit slow, and there's not really many characters that you even want it on. And then ADC, you're never building it, and no other role really builds it. So it's it's honestly like two characters in the game you're building it on, and
Honestly, maybe just put it in C because of that, dude. Like,
yeah,
I swear to God, I've never seen this item outside of Kama and Wukong.
yeah.
Like, this, the only characters I see it on.
And on those characters, I think people it just kind of feels a little bit nice once you start healing. But I bet you on Kama, if you just went like a Shifters and Sile, you would feel really good into a Cat Shield. You don't really need the item, and on Wukong, you don't even really need the item. It is viable though, and I do think it's like nice on him. But it's just it's two characters in the game, so um shifters is interesting. I actually really like this item. The problem with it is that if you compare the stats to something like a Void Shield or Glad Shield or even Berserker's next patch is being nerfed, but if you compare the stats, it's like it just has a little bit less stats, but the extra power you get from shifters, the 70 power, which is better than all the other shields in the tree, you actually do feel throughout the early to mid game. It's going to help your clear out a lot. It's going to help you kill the mid laner once you start rotating to those like mid camp fights or the Gold Fury. So you definitely feel it. The problem is if they have like a Sentinel's Embrace, they start getting their Thieves and their Sovereignties online. You just rather have a Void Shield because the percent pen you get from Void Shield actually comes in pretty handy for you and your jungler when you're diving. But I do think this is like a pretty cozy item. It does make you pretty tanky. It's pretty nice on like a lot of these characters that scale really well in solo, as far as like assassins, like with Kama. I even like it on like Tyr as like a third item. Just kind of makes you hit really hard with your auto attack cancels. Kind of makes you tanky as well to both physical and magical. So I would say it's A. I just don't think it's quite as good as like A plus or S, because I think like Void Shield or even Glad Shield or Berserkers are maybe just a little bit better than it.
Yeah, I mean, I like shifters actually. It definitely is a feel good item. Like, you clear the buff faster, you clear the wave faster. Just do like a lot of damage. Like when you rotate at the start of the game, you feel like shifters are just insane.
Yeah.
Because they don't really have like many base stats, and the support doesn't have his aura items. But yeah, it's not like overwhelming or anything. I think it just kind of fits the situation pretty well for when you buy it, because you're probably gonna be buying it like first three items. After that, it like doesn't really pop off too hard, but you can still notice it. I mean, I think A tier is fair.
What do you think of Blackthorn?
Like, uh, thing is, I don't actually think this item's that bad, but it's like there's no point in it really right now. That's the problem. It's kind of like in that same boat as Transcendence and like Shadow Steel and whatnot. Yeah, like with B tier, where there's actually just no reason to buy this item because it's competing with items that are just straight up better than it, and they kind of do the same thing anyways.
Yeah.
Uh, like for example, Glad Shield, like isn't Glad Shield stat wise just exactly the same? I guess it doesn't give the mana, but stat wise it's exactly the same. But I'd much rather have the bonus damage from Glad Shield than like the 10% CDR, which Glad Shield gives anyways. By the way,
Yeah. Yeah. It also gives you
so I don't
physical
know.
prot, so
It's literally just straight up worse than Glad Shield and probably some other items. I mean, it's straight up worse than Shifters. I've been messing around with it a little bit because nobody really buys it anymore. But I mean, I definitely understand why nobody buys it. It's kind of fun to just have the mana at the end, but that's about it.
yeah, you kind of do have infinite mana with it, which is maybe value on something like Guan, but if you go like a Breastplate Genji's, you're kind of infinite mana anyway. Um, yeah, it just has. I especially hated it last season. We'll talk about it in a couple items, but when Sledge was introduced, it literally was everything Blackthorn had, but so much better. It had prots instead of just like instead of having like a little bit of CDR and mana utility, but it also had CCR on it, which is very very valuable. It had literally more power than Blackthorn, or maybe the same power. I don't remember exactly, but when Sledge got introduced, I was like, what is the point of buying Blackthorn when Sledge is in the game? And it happens a lot with items. We've already talked about it a little bit, but they kind of just like introduce new items, and it kind of makes the old items obsolete. Now Sledge did get nerfed, and we can talk about that in a second. But I see the Frostbound like the same way. Like I don't know why I'd ever go Blackthorn, even on Mana Hungry Gods, when I can go something like Frostbound, which just makes me so much more aggressive. It allows me to actually 1v1 really well, and if they're not playing the right character into it, it will let me just straight up kill them. If they don't play it correctly, it also helps you 1v1 the ADC, and it's just kind of like, it doesn't have the greatest stats ever because it just gives you power and health, no prots or anything, but it does have that nice utility in the passive. And I really like Frostbound as an item. I think it's A plus, especially with the buff coming into this patch.
The only reason why I would put it in A is because of the stats. Actually, as you said, like they're really really bad. Every time I buy this item, like I don't even feel like I'm buying any stats. Honestly, like I just feel like I have the passive.
Yeah.
But it's really nice though. Like it actually enables so much. Just the passive alone enables for so much aggression, and it lets you get picks that you otherwise really would not be able to get. Like being able to slow someone down. Like say if someone proxies and they just use their escape to pass the tower to minimize damage, and then you go there with Frostbound, and then they're slowed for like 10 seconds, like barely moving. They got to your blue buff from the lane. You know, that's
Yeah.
as far as they go. I don't know. It enables a lot of different ways to play the game. I think. Well, mainly I guess aggressive, but a lot of things you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. And I think in team fights it kind of falls off, but at that point it's probably already done the job pretty nicely, and the attack speed reduction still stays relevant. So
Yeah.
I mean I would say A plus just because of the item of how much it enables, but the stats are really really bad.
Yeah, stats on its own, it's like a C tier item, but the passive is just so insane for that, especially in solo, just like 1v1ing. If they don't play around it correctly, like you're gonna kill them or you're gonna force their ult, and it just kind of changes the way the enemy solo has to play the game a little bit, especially if you're playing like the right character with Frostbound. What do you think of Reforged though?
I mean, it's not bad, but it's just again not much of a purpose to it. Maybe it's a little bit better than we give it credit for, honestly. But thing is, like, what's the point in buying this when you can just buy another? Like, you boost the damage by 20% while someone's CC'd. But why not just do damage? Why not just do more damage?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, not even while they're CC'd. Why not just do more damage?
exactly.
So
That's the way I
yeah,
see
I don't
it.
know. The condition is kind of killing it a lot. The stats are very nice though. It's like comparing it with Shifter Shield, I guess, in terms of stats. It's like what 50 power to 50 health.
Hmm.
So it's up there. But yeah, I don't know. Passive is just too bad, and the price isn't even like impressive or anything. I think it needs some sort of identity. It's like something to it added. Maybe I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, this item is just whatever, dude. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I think all it needs to be said is that why wouldn't you just want to do more damage than having to rely on a passive that's conditional? Like just buy another item that makes you do more damage, you know? And there's plenty of them, trust me. Sledge actually was last season honestly like an S plus item. It did get nerfed quite a bit. They nerfed the health, they nerfed the procs you get from the passive. But I still think that maybe this item's just kind of like a neutral A, where it's like you could purchase this in every single game, no matter what role you're playing, if you're a physical, and you'll feel okay with it. And I do think it's better than like the Blackthorn or Runeforge options. But I do think the nerfs dropped it off a little bit, and it's more in line. It's kind of just a balance item, in my opinion, kind of just sitting at A. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the people keep telling me this item's dead, but like I don't understand. Like it's really not that bad. Like why
Yeah,
are
yeah.
people exaggerating? You can still buy it, right, and feel pretty good about it. But yeah, it fell pretty far down compared to what it was. But now that it's balanced, apparently it's dead. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, I guess.
It was
I
purchased
guess.
in 4 roles last season, every single game. But that's now that that's a little bit more balanced, it's just dead, I guess. Yeah. Um, I think it's just like sitting
But
at
it
A.
deserves A tier. I mean, it's like nothing impressive anymore. It's pretty good though. Like you could just buy it and feel good about it.
Yeah, I think maybe in the spots that you were gonna buy it before, you maybe just throw a Witchblade in now, because Witchblade is kind of like a nice bridge item, and Sledge is kind of that item, at least in solo. But I think supports maybe can still go that tank boot Sledge build if they're playing a physical and have max CCR and still be very very tanky and annoying on the map. And yeah, it's still got that versatility. So, oh, Berserkers, what do you think of Berserkers?
Well, okay, but the Berserker's nerfs are really big. Probably
Yeah,
the biggest item nerf of the patch. Uh, Before I think Berserkers was S plus,
for
like
sure.
before this new patch making it like this, just ridiculously overstated. I was comparing Atalanta's bow to Berserkers. Like, just think about it. Atalanta's bow is 25 power, 25% attack speed, 10% pen. No passive, basically. Berserkers, 50 power, 20 fist pros, 20% attack speed, 10% pen. Passive, you get power, attack speed. Like, what the fuck? Like, what happened there, man?
Yeah,
What
it's a
happened?
consistent thing.
Uh,
It happens a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still good. Like it's definitely A plus at least, even after the change. Um, but yeah, I don't know, dude. This item is just ridiculously overstated, and I don't even know why. Like they have exactly the same items already displayed to them, but for some reason, this one just has everything.
Yeah. And it was being bought this patch, the one before the nerf. It was being bought in 3 or 4 roles like every game, and it was changing builds. It made certain builds more viable. It was like kind of dictating the whole meta because ADCs were being played everywhere with this plus like fail not, and honestly definitely was S plus. But I think the nerfs, like you said, do bring it more in line, probably around A plus. Still gonna be a decent item. Obviously A plus is still pretty good. Um, but yeah, no longer gonna dictate the meta, hopefully. Um, and then moving on to Glad Shield, which is kind of like the Berserker's brother, kind of like the ability based shield as opposed to auto attack based shield. I think this item's pretty good. Probably sitting at like A plus. I think it's, like I said before, it's stronger than something like a Shifters because it gives you more stats, and it does have the conditional passive where they have to be lower than, was it 75% health for you to get their 50%? I forget exactly, but you get the actual extra damage on your abilities. But the base stats alone are kind of just nice for it, and I think it's just kind of like an A plus item. The only problem with this item is that it competes with Void Shield a little bit in the same item slot. And Void Shield, like I said, especially in a meta where there's like a lot of aura items, a lot of prots being built across the map, Void Shield is just kind of nice for diving and having that aura reduction for your teammates. But one thing I do really like about Glad Shield is if you go Glad Shield plus Void Shield, especially on characters like, if you go this on like Arthur or certain other characters, that's a really really sick combo. Actually, you get a ton of damage from it, and it also makes you really tanky because they both give health and prots. So I think it's like A plus.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's gonna line up pretty well. Shifters an A, Berserkers, Glads an A plus, Void Shield. You guessed it. It says.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Glad Shield is it's just very very nice. I like this item a lot, and I mean, when it was changed, I actually wasn't playing much Smite back then. But then when I came back, like at first I didn't buy it because like I mean, I don't even know why I didn't buy it, but then I started buying it a lot, and it's actually very nice that you can go full tank and still kind of do damage. And that's what Glad Shield enables.
Hmm.
Like you're not doing the most damage ever, but it does enable you to be a bit more tanky, and it makes characters like Arthur or I don't know what other like I guess you could go to Uncle Cullen too, but like on Arthur specifically, I love this item on like Mulan, where
Achilles.
you don't necessarily yeah Achilles as well, like where you don't necessarily like 100 to 0. but you need a couple rotations of abilities. But then they just get so much more damage out than what you would normally be doing,
Yeah.
and the stats are very nice too.
Yeah. It's honestly not even that bad in the mid game because it gives you some power, some CDR, so it helps you clear a little bit. So they're pretty good. And I already threw it in there, but I think we both
Yeah,
agree
I
Void
mean,
Shield says.
Void Shield just ridiculous, dude. Like the stats are absurd. Like this is my first. Every time I play physical versus physical, this is my first item.
Hmm.
Like I go boots Void Shield every game, pretty much. It's pretty ridiculous. I guess unless you need like mana or something. But even when you need mana, so like say on like Wukong, you could go uh Bluestone, which kind of covers it up. You can still go Void Shield. I don't know. This item is insane stats, and that's all it does. Like just raw stats, and like the pen, I guess you could kind of filter it in the same way. It reduces in an AOE, so it's gonna reduce more than any other item technically in terms of like prots.
Yeah.
I don't know. Might be slightly overstated. I don't know. I don't know if they need to nerf this item necessarily. It
No,
does
no.
feel kind of nice to keep buying it, but
I don't think they should nerf it because it's really only ever bought in solo, and it's one of the only tank items, in my opinion, that you just feel good buying. Like, I think there's this, and when I say feel good, I mean like it actually feels impactful. Like you are a little bit tankier and you're also doing more damage, and it just feels good in every single build. I think maybe Pridwin is kind of similar in that regard, and like maybe some other items like a fully stacked Urchin, uh, but Void Shield honestly is like it's just quintessential tank item for solo, and I think it's really only ever bought there. So don't do anything to it. No, I actually don't think they
actually,
need
yeah,
to
don't nerf
either.
it, don't nerf it, don't nerf it, don't nerf it. What am I saying, dude?
Yeah,
Fuck
and I don't even
off.
think they need to do anything to it. Like objectively, I think it's even though it's really really strong. I think kind of like kin size, it's like necessarily strong, you know. So in a similar regard, I actually think Ansal's insane right now. I would throw it in S. Like they buffed it to have 60 power on it, 30 prot, and 10% CDR, and a really nice passive that makes it really hard for mages to deal with junglers diving them. It's also viable in solo if you're playing like a bruiser character like a Kama or any assassin solo or even some physical solos like Achilles and his tank. Achilles in his take stance with like an Ansile, shifters, and a void shield is going to be hitting really, really hard while also being really tanky. I just think it having 60 power on it is is a bit too much power for like a bruiser item. And it's very viable in jungle, very viable in solo. Honestly, I bet you if you played an ADC mid and you throw this into a build into a mage, you probably make that mage make their life really horrible and make their guardian diving you feel really bad. So I'd say this is S. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this item is again ridiculous. I actually really like the change that they did. Like they gave it a bit more clear direction in what it's doing, like giving you way more power than it does prots.
Yeah.
Um, I don't really know if they should necessarily nerf this item much. Maybe like tad bit on the prots, but like it's just ridiculous stat wise for the price. That's all this item does. The passive is nice though. You could definitely feel it like against some like say if you're playing Cerberus against an Ansile, it's really annoying when your two gets cancelled or like you have to one to proc it, but then you might miss your one or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like it's annoying to play against this, and it cancels out a lot of abilities like in the middle of a team fight randomly, and then you die because of it. So, like the passive is definitely there. You could feel it kind of impact the game a lot. But I think just because of that passive actually being so good, the stats might be slightly over the top. But yeah, I mean, really strong item, S for sure.
Yeah, sometimes when people like come in my stream when I buy this item and they'll be like, "Oh, they have a Thoth. When you're not even interrupting his abilities, why do you have Ansile?" But if you think about it and you're grouped up with everyone else, like you're in the middle of a team fight as a soul laner and their Thoth randomly hits you with his one, you're canceling the other people's abilities for a second in the middle of that team fight. So you don't have to necessarily even buy it for their mage. You could just be using their mage as a way to proc it for other people. So it kind of always gets value in that regard, and especially when it has that many base stats, it's good. What do you think,
Cat
Ken?
Shield. I mean, I would say this item would be like S maybe, but they are nerfing it quite a lot. Like price is going up by 250.
That's quite a lot, yeah.
So I think it should probably be S plus. I mean, the stats are obviously insane, and that is probably one of the main reasons why you're buying this item. Um, you do want to couple it with the healing though, because the healing passive is really really nice. Like say on Guan Yu or like on Kama, you probably want this item. I think you could buy this item even if you don't have healing though, because of the stats, and it also boosts like lifesteal and say someone else has healing, whatnot.
Sov.
Um, solve HP 5. I don't know. It's. I mean, I like it. I actually find it pretty fun to buy this
Yeah,
item.
I love it.
And I like that it's strong too.
Yeah,
I think it's healthy for the game.
I like when Cat Shield and Rod of Asclepius. I hated when they changed it so it only worked on ability healing. I think having these
Dude,
items work on like everything in the
I
game just makes so many cool builds. Like you can do so many cool things. You can go like Soul Eater plus Cat Shield. You can go like a Saw healing build on like Ares plus a Rod of Asclepius, and your two is gonna be healing. Like you can do so many cool things when it actually interacts with items, and it just makes builds more fun. And I think, like you said, the item right now, if you were to do it, it'd be like S or S plus because it's insane for the gold. You know what's so troll? Sorry, I know you're about to say something, but what's so troll about this item and the way they nerfed it is that the reason that they nerfed it is because they didn't even mean to reduce the cost of the tier 3 before. They accidentally did that because the tier 2 they reduced. Remember, they did like the tier 2 of Ansile plus Cat Shield. They made it
Mhm.
cheaper, and they accidentally made the tier 3 for Cat Shield 250 gold cheaper. And I was like, why did they do that? This is like a really good item for 2250. And then they're like, oh, oops, we did that on accident. Now that, healing is maybe a little bit good, we're going to bring it back.
uh, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, you were talking about like the interactions where it increases all healing, not just abilities. Dude,
Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't back me up, man. I remember this discussion specifically where
When?
people were
Was it in
a
Discord?
couple of years ago. Yeah, it was in the Discord. It was a couple of years ago. I was saying that I find it fun that Asclepius works on like Fire Giant
I
and
think I remember
potions and stuff
that.
like that. And people were against it, dude. I
Yeah, I
actually
remember that.
hated my
They
life.
said they said
And
uh
now,
they said how is an interaction fun or something like that. But it's not the fact that the interaction itself is like, oh my god, look, more healing, this is amazing. It's that you can like do cool builds. It can make like certain team comps more viable. It can do certain things to just like the side effects from it are a lot better. I remember that though, so I'm sorry I didn't back you
oh,
up.
dude, I'm still, my feelings are hurt still from that day, dude. Holy shit! And they reverted it anyways. Like, oh my god, dude,
Yeah,
that hurt even more when they reverted it.
it is pretty weird that they kind of flip flopped on that, but Um, I think this is me. Yeah, this is me. Moving on to Runic Shield. Oh my goodness, what a sad item. This item is like, it's just so like you look at it and you're like, dude, I really want to purchase this, but it's just so hard to get into builds these days. Like, uh, I honestly don't even know exactly why. If I'm being completely honest, I think it's the fact that like, some of the blades are a little bit better now, so that's kind of like your nice bridge item if you want to go that. There's like a pure tank build is a little bit more viable. If you're going to like a magical bruiser item, you might as well just go Ansile, even though it makes you less tanky than something like a runic shield. You just do so much more damage and have more utility from it. But this item is, I know he said it a few times and we keep saying it, but like this item has taken a huge backseat to other items in the game. And I don't know, what do you think? Are you even buying this item anymore?
I remember actually like a couple of days ago specifically, I was looking at Runic Shield and I'm like, wait, what the hell? Like, I
Yeah,
remember buying this item. What happened? Uh, it just doesn't really feel good to fit into a build. I feel like right now.
yeah,
Like, if you're gonna buy a magical defense item, you're either gonna go like Genji's Ansile if you want damage, or you're gonna go like Talisman or something. I don't know. A Wingblade gives magical procs too right now, so
yeah,
I feel like the magical options are pretty clear on what you want, and you don't really want to reduce someone's magical power by 40. Like, is that really gonna do like a lot? I
yeah.
think the passive is pretty underwhelming. In fact, in my mind, it doesn't even exist anymore. Um, so you're literally just buying this for the stats, but they're not even impressive anyways.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think this item just doesn't really. It just doesn't really have too much of a place in builds right now, and it belongs in B tier for sure based on that description.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of builds, your third item, especially if you go something like Shifters first or Void Shield, you kind of want something that gives you mana. And then there's like Genjis, there's Talisman of Energy, there's Onis, there's all those options that kind of give you all that mana, where Runic Shield doesn't give you that. And if you don't need the mana and you do want a Power Bruiser item, you're just gonna go Ansile or like a Windblade maybe, for just like for that like utility. Yeah, it's just B tier. I don't know. I never buy it anymore. What do you think? A mystical mail?
Ooh, mystical mail. I like this item a lot actually. It feels pretty nice. It's really bad stats actually, like atrocious stats.
Yeah,
It's unexplainably bad, but the passive is very nice and it always will be. I think it helps. It just helps with a lot of things. Like, you just kind of say if your totem clear is bad and you have mystical mail, it helps out. If you're just chasing someone but you can't quite catch up, you're waiting for your like gap closer. to come back up. Mystical Mail still ticks. If you're doing like blue buff, you could just auto it down with Mystical Mail. It's a lot faster. I don't know. It has a lot of very nice uses, but it's not like strong or anything. It's just kind of nice to have.
Yeah, I'd say it's like A tier. I like it on some characters. I really like it on Serb because you get magical pen and you kind of just one shot with all of your damage combined. I like it on like sometimes on auto attack characters, even though I think maybe they can get away with more of like an auto attack focused build these days with Deathtoll and I don't know. I think it's actually feels pretty good on something like Cuckoo, but for the most part, it's not really going to be that insane, and it does help with just like clearing stuff around the map, which is kind of nice, especially if you have like long cooldowns or if you're playing like Nike or something and just like running around hyper farming. But yeah, I would probably just say A tier. Shield of Regrowth, just a really niche item. I think on like Hercules, this is a really sick item. And then other than that, I don't even know who you're buying this on besides Hercules. Maybe it's C tier for that reason.
Maybe Naja, dude.
Oh yeah, Najah is actually pretty good on. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's really impactful on those gods, so maybe B for that reason. But it's kind of similar to Soul Eater, where it's like you're only buying this on a couple or maybe a few gods, if you can even think of like a few more. But it is impactful on them, so I think maybe you could throw it in B. And the stats on it aren't absolutely horrible. 2,000 gold for 300 health. 10% CDR, 10% what is it, 10 HP5 or something like that, and then the crazy amount of movement speed you get from the passive. The reason I think this item's still kind of nice is that it's one of the few items in the game that gives you a ton of movement speed. Movement speed has actually been reduced across the board, as far as like all the items, all the blades have less, all the the daggers have less, and all that. And this one still gives you 30%, I think, or maybe 25% or something like that. So it does have a nice passive if you can proc it, but it's just like so niche that it's like sitting in B tier.
Yeah, I mean the only thing about this item really that you have to kind of point out is that it's niche. Like it's, I mean I don't really see it ever. I don't even think I've seen it in like the last 3 weeks or so. I think maybe I've seen it like at the very start of the season. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Just so specific on who you want to buy it on that you don't really ever get to see this item. But when you do, it does, like, I guess, kind of well. So
Yeah. Thebes S.
Thebes S, yeah, but a needed S for sure.
Yeah.
Like this is the pretty people either buy Thebes straight after boots or like they buy Solve and then go Thebes or something. I don't know. Either way, you're gonna see this pretty much every game on a support. The stats are insane. But that's all it does. It just gives stats, insane stats, and it does give like the aura prots, but it's only 10 aura prots. I mean, I guess they add up if you like combo it, but I don't know. This item just enables supports to just kind of get away with a lot of different items straight after Thebes. Like you could go Thebes into anything. Honestly, you could literally go Thebes into anything.
Thebes into
You go like
Heartseeker.
Spear, Heartseeker. It probably works, or Spear of the Magus or something. I don't know. Just Thebes something it works because Thebes covers up for Thebes is basically 2 defense items in one.
Yeah.
That's how good stat wise it.
Yeah, it's insane stats. We were talking about this earlier, but it seems like support role is almost greedier than the solo these days. And if you go at Thieves first item, like you're just saying, you can pretty much take your build wherever you want to next. You could go more utility, go like a Relic Dagger, a Witchblade or something, or you can go like pure damage, throw in like a Spear of the Magus. Maybe you're crazy and you're playing a physical and you just go third item Stone Cutting. I bet you if you played Fender support and went third item Stone Cutting, it would be really good with the Thieves as well. And it's just an insane item. For some reason, supports get this insane, basically better Urchin, and then we have to sit there and buy Urchin third or fourth item and then stack it up to even feel good about it. But so moving on to Stone of Gaia, I think this item's actually pretty good. It's really only ever purchased in solo. You can't really purchase it in any of the other roles. I mean, you can purchase it there; it's just not as viable. But I like it. I think it kind of on certain characters, even into like lane bullies, you can buy this on like more greedy characters, and you can get away with like the laning phase. Gives you a ton of sustain. It also can work well with certain like healing comps with like extra healing. If you go like a CAD shield, or if you're just like kind of going for that direction. It has taken a little bit of a backseat to other items just because going into the season, the out of combat healing was nerfed a little bit, but I think that I think Gaia is still pretty good. Just kind of like you can build this on most like soul laners and feel pretty good about it because it'll enable your early and mid game and just like staying out on the map and farming. But Not too strong anymore. I think it's just around A.
Yeah, I mean, it literally just does that one thing. It helps you stay out there for longer. It doesn't speed up your clear. It doesn't like let you trade necessarily better. I guess unless you get into trade into like a knock up like tier, for example. You could trade back into him. Not that it matters anyways, because tier can heal it up. But it,
Yeah.
it's a solid option to like just kind of stay active a bit longer. But it doesn't help you in any other way. So
Yeah.
it's okay. I think A tier is fine.
All right. So Mail of Renewal is next, but we are going to be talking about the changed Mail of Renewal.
Ooh, let me open up my patch notes real quick so I
Okay.
can
Before you read it,
get,
I
get
personally think this is going to be S tier. I think this item's going to be insane. Maybe A plus. Hard to say. I need your input on it. Basically, you're going to get prots from it now. It's going to heal in an AoE. It's going to have a 60-second cooldown on the passive, but it's going to heal you for 15% of your health after you're hit 5 times, basically. So it's just got like, it actually has a ton of stats on it. They do this with items all the time. We've been talking about it, but they just start throwing stats on it to make it more
Oh wait,
viable.
this item is actually insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah, that is S for sure. Maybe S plus, honestly. Like you become a healer. What the hell?
Yeah, you heal in an AoE. It gives you prots. It's kind of like a sledge because you get prots when you're like near people. You have to get it actually by them hitting you, but they're going to be hitting you if you're near them. So, um,
Yeah, like what's the point of like Urshin? It gives roughly the same stats, but this like heals you and your team.
yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, we keep talking about it, but they really want certain items to be good after not being good for a while. So they're just like, all right, let's throw this stat on it. Let's throw this stat on it, and let's make it a healing item as well. So, um, yeah, I think it's going to be S with the changes, similar to the
Yeah,
other one.
I'm probably buying this every game, dude. Jesus.
Yeah,
Like,
I thought about it in solo.
that's
Imagine you buy this first item in solo, you get a little bit of prots, a little bit of health, and every time you trade with the solo, it's obviously a 60-second cooldown, but you're gonna heal for 15%. They don't even have to have a knockup like Gaia, and they'll just heal you every 60 seconds basically for 15% of your health. So, um, it's kind of interesting item, but yeah, um,
Relic Dagger.
yeah, I think it's you.
Ooh, I mean, I think Relic Dagger is actually kind of decent. The only problem is it doesn't really have too much of a place in builds. Like the stats are actually kind of ridiculous. Like the more you think about them, but like you you only really want this on support. Like I don't see you buying this on any other role than support. First of all, because you probably just want raw stats and like damage and whatnot rather than utility.
Hmm.
That's kind of just the trend in Smite that you want more raw stats and damage rather than utility, which is a bit sad for some items that have cool interactions, but it is what it is. So, I don't know. It doesn't really fill in much of a purpose outside of uh, giving you some cooldown reduction on your relics, but you don't really buy this item for the stats or anything. They are nice, of course, but it's like literally one intention behind this item.
Yeah, maybe it's B tier for that reason because it's really only ever bought in support, and it you know even like I maybe built it a little bit last year in certain builds in solo, but now that TP is a little bit more viable, and like you don't really want to go relic dagger for TP, so then you're only going to have one real relic that you want to be reduced in solo, so it's not really viable there. In support, it is good in support, and especially if you're going like a certain like double team fight relic build, or if you have like a frenzy shell or like horrific shit, just like stuff like that, and to be able to use those on cooldown is really nice, especially if you're doing it around objectives. But it's really just support, and even in solo, when you look at this tree of items, probably you're just gonna go Witchblade or Wingblade instead of that item most of the time anyway. So, and speaking of those items, Wingblade pretty strong right now actually. I think probably A plus, kind of just as a nice little bridge item for tanks into magical characters. Obviously the passive and the slow immunity is very, very annoying for characters like Nemesis or any characters that really rely on their slows. And it kind of just works in team fights as well. Even if they don't rely on their slows, if you just randomly get that slow immunity and that extra movement speed in the fight, it can be really good. I think it's A plus. Kind of just they they do this, but they threw magical protections on it, and now it's just kind of like got a bunch of good stats that you kind of like. The only thing it doesn't have is power, which maybe makes it a little bit worse than other items in solo. But in solo you could build it. In jungle you could probably build it. Find it with like an Ansile. You could probably build this in support, and yeah, I think this is a pretty good item now.
Yeah, this is pure utility item. It's probably one of the best utility items, if not the best. And the only thing that held it back before is that the stats weren't too attractive, but now they are. And
Yeah,
why not slap some power on it too, dude? I
let's
mean,
do it.
might
Why
as well
not?
at this point. But yeah, it's very good. I think A plus is definitely where it belongs. And same with Witchblade. Actually, I think Witchblade is A plus too.
Yeah.
This is well, Witchblade again. Like you never really bought this item before. Well, I mean you did, but it was like a very last item, and it was because you didn't really have anything better to get. But now they kind of fixed the stats. Um, they gave it some fizz prots too, which is perfect for what you're trying to do with it. And it just ended up being Midgardian mail, but good.
Yeah. And
And yeah, I mean A plus for sure.
yeah, this one I actually agree with it having physical prots on, because not having building an item to counter an ADC which didn't have any physical prots on it always felt pretty bad, because you're like, okay, well, maybe it helps a little bit, but there's like, you don't even really get a lot of physical protections in the rest of your items in Smite for the past couple seasons, so it kind of always was hard to fit this item in a build. So I think this item is actually, yeah, pretty good now, A plus, and it doesn't even feel bad building into ADCs now, so that's nice. Magi's Blessing, kind of a niche counter item on mainly junglers. Um, in the past, you maybe saw this built in like mid or AD especially into like characters like Neja and stuff. But honestly, if you're going a tank item in those roles, you might just want a mantle, or you might just want like something, maybe you skipped your starter and you're gonna go like a Warrior's Axe or a Sundering Axe rather, or like a Sentinel's Embrace in mid lane, something, I don't know, crazy stuff like that. But it's just so niche nowadays, and it is good into certain characters that really rely on their CC to start a fight, like Neja, and characters that, team comps that can't really proc it that well. But there's just so much CC in Smite these days that it's pretty easy to proc, and I just think it has fallen off quite a bit, probably around B tier.
Yeah, one problem I have with Magi's Blessing is like whenever you have Magi's Blessing, you treat the bubble like it's treasure. Like you don't really want to go in because they might pop your bubble, and it's I don't know, it's kind of a weird item because that's all it does give anyways. Like the stats are really really bad. So it's a pure utility item, and being immune to one form of CC, especially if you're a jungler and you like kind of just like say you blink in and you're immune to one form of CC. I mean that could have been your beads anyways, and then you do more damage instead. Like
Yeah,
you're not really gaining much for buying Magi's. There's no real reward to it. You essentially play it the same way. So
yeah.
this item definitely doesn't have a place right now in Smite. It's B for sure.
What do you think, Urchin?
Ooh, Urchin, dude, I actually love the. It's one of my favorite items in the game. One of the most
Yeah,
fun
agreed.
passives ever as well. Like the shield is just so fun. Um, the stats are actually kind of decent, I guess. Like they're not absolutely horrible. It is a pure defensive item though, so you want to build it after you've already kind of established your build. Like you say you get your void shield, you get your whatever the hell you want for magical defense. You get all your things kind of settled, and then you slap an urchin in there, like just because you really want to like min max some stats. Even when you just buy it, it actually feels kind of nice because the stats are really really nice. And then it has the potential to be one of the best tank items in the game. So I like it a lot, and I'm pretty sure everybody likes it, especially when it's stacked up. Everybody likes it.
Yeah, when it's fully stacked, I love it as well. I mean, I purchase this item like almost every game. It depends. Like some characters I won't buy it on, and some characters can get away with another build. But I love it as well, and I think it kind of enables a lot of different builds just because it is similar to Gauntlet of Thieves. It's like a little bit worse than Gauntlet of Thieves, but it's kind of like that same idea where it's just like a nice stat pad item that's going to give you a lot of different stuff, and it's kind of like your one pure central defense item that you can kind of build a whole build around it. Kind of get away with other greedy items. And it's also, you could throw this item on like ADC solos, magical solos, and it kind of be your only defense item, and it feels pretty nice. You do have to worry about stacking it up though, but it doesn't feel, people kind of overestimate not having it stacked. I think it's still like a decent item when you have it purchased without the stacks. And then moving on to Mantle, I mean, this has been kind of the go-to defense item for, I don't know, a couple seasons now. It did get a nerf recently where the passive actually takes a second to proc, but honestly, still probably one of the best defense items in the game. 60 of each prot, a really good passive for surviving. It is a little bit expensive at 2,900 gold, but I mean, at the point in the game that you're buying this, the gold is pretty prevalent. Like you're able to get to that pretty easily. I would say, I don't know, you could maybe say A plus, but I think it's probably S. Probably just one of the best defense items in the game. I mean, people buy this in every role, especially if you like watch SPL last year or the year before that. There's like probably 6 or 7 mantles in every single SPL game if it goes late game. So I think for that reason alone, just how versatile it is and how prevalent it is, it's probably S.
Yeah, this Mantle is what Magi's used to be. Like until Mantle was introduced, people would be buying Magi's like every single game. You know, like every SPL game, you'd see like 7 bubbles, right? And that's Mantle's role right now. Like that's the defense item everybody buys when they feel like they are just dying way too fast and more damage doesn't really help the situation. You just slap a Mantle in there, you know.
Yeah.
It's just very good, like all around. There's really no downside to this item.
Mm-hmm.
S for sure.
Spirit Robe, kind of its younger brother. I guess older brother because it's been in the game
Yeah.
longer.
I mean, I like Spirit Robe. I think it has like it's all around decent, but it also does one thing better than any other item. Enables like percent myth builds, like when you just stack a lot of mitigation. Say you go Sigil of the Old Guard, only Hunter's Garb. Like it fits those kinds of builds really, really nicely. The stats aren't even much worse than Mantle, anyways. They are noticeably worse, but at least it has a passive that's always there, as opposed to Mantle, which is just kind of a get out of jail free card.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say it's about like A plus. You do feel the tankiness from the passive, especially when you get like at the beginning of a fight, you get CC'd and all in. It does help a lot. Um, and it does work really well with those damage mitigation builds. Only problem I have with Spirit Robe is sometimes the condition can be a little bit awkward because, like on certain characters that you have like long duration CC immunities on, like Famana or Cthulhu, or if you're playing a character that wants to like blink ult at the beginning of the fight and get CC immunity, you don't always get as much value of it out of the passive as maybe some other items. But it's still a very strong item, and I think maybe actually a little bit under purchased across the board. So yeah, probably around A plus. Moving on to Emperor's Armor, this got some buffs going into the season. It's actually only 2,000 gold for the stats on it. They do this quite often, but it now has 60, I think 60 physical prot on it, or 50 maybe. And
Yeah, it's 60.
60, and was it 250 health? So like the base stats on it for 2,000 gold really aren't that bad, and it's just so troll because they just kept buffing it, and now it actually has just as base stats has like decent stats for only 2,000 gold. The passive is just really really niche, and I would honestly throw this item in maybe B, maybe you could say A. The reason I don't really think this passive, the concept behind this passive works that well, is that at the point in the game that you're buying this, what's better than just taking less damage from the Phoenix is taking less damage from the enemy ADC or the enemy mage. So if you're buying this item, why wouldn't you just buy something that's going to help you a little bit more dive them, so that the person who's actually doing damage to you, not the Phoenix, it's the ADC or the mage, you just take less damage from them so you can actually tank them instead of the Phoenix. So to be fair, now that it has 60 prot and 250 health, that does help a little bit with the ADC. So I think maybe for that reason it's more viable and is in the A slot. But the general idea behind this item, I can't really get behind too much.
Yeah, I think it's definitely A, but just to explain it a little bit better, I guess. You can like say your support has this item, Emperor's Armor. They're tanking the Phoenix only, while the solo laners like diving, while the support's like kind of staying further back. You know, like it does work fairly well, but it is very specific where it works. I think it might be slightly more effective in defenses. I mean, I know Kaz loves this item; he buys it a lot of games actually. It's also a very very nice item for when you're snowballing a game.
Yeah, definitely helps
Um,
with that.
and all this together, I think, does kind of add up to it being A tier. Like stats are pretty ridiculous, niche passive, but it just works. I think it works well enough, at least to the point where you kind of want to buy it.
Yeah, they definitely have made enough changes to it where it's like just pretty good now. Um,
But the Guardian Mail shit tier, dude. Oh my god, I think this is the worst item in the game right now.
yeah, I
There
agree.
is no doubt in my mind. Like it's just really really bad. It's a really bad Witchblade right now. Like a really bad. Like it's so bad. It has roughly the same. So just to kind of remind everyone, 40 fist prots, 300 health for 2,300 gold. A Witchblade is 30 fist procs, 250 health, 10% CDR, 7% movement speed for 2050 gold. So it's cheaper, but it gives way more stats. And Midgardian Mill has a very specific condition. They have to hit you with an auto attack. That's when they get slowed.
Yeah.
But after 3 autos, you get slow attack speed slow for 24%, and you get slow yourself for 24%. Witchblade instantly is 20%. They don't have
It's
to hit you,
25.
and it's 25. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
it's even better. Jeez, it's better than a full stack Midgardian, and you don't even have to hit. You don't even need them to hit you. You just stand next to them. It's a disaster, dude. This item, you're
Yeah.
just asking to lose the game. I think if you buy this item, like it's stat wise, it's horrible, and the passive is just doesn't even exist.
Yeah, I didn't even quite realize until the other day. I think it was when I was watching your stream that like when you compare the two items, it's literally pathetic that like they're the exact same item almost, apart from Midgardian giving you a little bit of a slow and movement speed. But Witchblade is just better in almost every aspect, and the funny part is you can't even stack them next patch. Like the strongest aura attack speed reduction is going to take over. And that's the only thing that's going to work. So you can't even combine them to make a good build. You just always would rather build Witchblade. Every single scenario you would think about building Midgardian, you should build Witchblade. There's no exceptions. So Midgardian, honestly, shit tier. Yeah, I agree. I think competing with Atalantas and maybe another item if we keep going for a worst item in the game. But on the opposite end of that, I think Sovereignty is actually really strong. I would say A+. I don't think it's quite like S. It's really only bot and support. I feel like maybe in solo people maybe under purchase this item just because it kind of gives you everything you want. HP 5, lots of physical prot, a nice little aura for you and your jungler maybe, and just some good amount of health. But it's just a really strong aura item. Pretty much bought in every single game combined with Thieves, and there's a lot of physical damage on the entire map. So it's just pretty much always good. So I would say A+.
Yeah, I agree with A+. And for Solve, dude, I mean, I always just want to buy this item in solo lane, dude. But every time I press tab, I see the support button. Like, he wants to hog that item first, so I
Yeah.
can't buy it. Like, I hate it, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. It's so cheap. It's just so nice. The stats are so nice, man. It's this item. I love it. I love how strong it is right now as well. I don't want to see this item get nerfed too much.
For sure. Uh, what about breastplate?
Breastplate. I mean, to be honest, it's really not that bad. I don't think it can go lower than A, but I
Yeah,
don't think it can go higher than A as
yeah,
well.
it's
Like
right there.
it's your go-to cooldown reduction item in solo lane. But that's also the bad part because if you really don't want to buy breastplate, but you gotta buy breastplate if you
Yeah,
want CDR.
yeah, exactly. Uh, Going into this season, I think it's maybe a little bit worse just because if you have upgraded blue, you get 20%, and you kind of get away with some builds that don't have CDR early game, mid game. That's kind of nice, but obviously you have the condition of getting your blue upgraded. But I always feel bad. Like when you purchase the item, it's obviously you're gonna be a little bit tankier. It's gonna be hard for you to get ganked and killed. You're gonna have the CDR, so you can like start ulting waves. You can start trading with the CDR and stuff like that. But the worst part is that later on in the game, you almost always want to like throw a Pridwin in your build because Pridwin is so nice. But if you have breastplate, you don't really want to buy Pridwin because then if you have blue buff, you're overcapped. Or if you have any other CDR in the build, then it just feels really bad. So this item is just like, it is good when you purchase it a lot of the time on certain characters, but it's just like it's just kind of like a bad item after that. So
Yeah, at this point, this is just a bridge item in my mind. Like, this is just to help you out at the start of the game because it is realistically very nice at the start of the game. Like, it's every stat that you want, but it just feels so bad the longer the game goes. Like, you just kind of want to get rid of it because there's just better items out there.
yeah, exactly. Especially like bruiser items that actually give you power. Um, But Contagion, on the other hand, I actually think, I mean, I'll put it in the same tier as Breastplate just because it's more niche and building it into anti-heal. Maybe you could throw it in A+, just because anti-heal is so prevalent, but I actually think Contagion's pretty good. Some nice stats. It's another one of those items that just has a ton of stats on it and actually has health. I think this and Spectral are the only items in this tree that have health. Breastplate and Nemean do not, so whenever you have an item that has a decent amount of physical prot or a decent amount of prot plus health, it's always at least a little bit viable in my opinion, and Contagion has that. And I think because healing is so prevalent, it's actually a pretty nice go-to physical defense item for like whether you're against like a Kama or a tier maybe, or even if they have healing across their comp and you're not really in need of a pestilence because they don't have to worry about magical damage. Contagion's the go-to. So I think probably A plus for this item, to be honest.
Yeah, like I love Contagion. Honestly, it is just better than Pestilence. But the problem is that Contagion is competing with such good items that you almost never really have room for it, and you kind of have to go Pestilence.
Yeah,
Like if you want some anti-heal, that's the problem with it. But like as a standalone item, I think it's very very nice, and I think A plus for sure. Yeah.
could help you with the ADC's lifesteal as well. Nemean in C tier.
Neiman is so sad, dude. I mean, it might be shit tier, honestly.
Yeah, it might be.
They killed it. They actually killed it. I think this. Well, to be fair, I guess this item was kind of too strong, but at the same time, considering it was too strong, I kind of liked it that people could sack some damage for block stacks, like specifically for block stacks.
Yeah,
You didn't really sack this item for the prots or whatever the hell the stats are, but like it was nice when you saw backliners buy this item for block stacks specifically, and I kind of liked the idea behind that. I really don't like it that they tied it to prots. And at the end of the day, like blocking and auto attack, I mean, the bad stats, do they really cover up like an auto attack or two? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So it's I don't know, it's just in a really bad spot. I like the idea still, but they definitely killed this item, and I would say maybe even shit tier. I don't think I've ever seen this item in my games this season.
Yeah, it has definitely fallen off quite a bit. Um, I think in late game, if you are able to purchase, I feel like the effect from the passive, if you are able to get 3 block stacks, is still decent. So it's going to be better than, like, the way I see McGuardian and Atalantis is that you should literally never buy these. There's like absolutely no reason to over other items. But if you are able to get the 3 stacks in a late game scenario with Nemean, it's still okay, right? Like the effect is still decent, but it's just like you're just never really doing that, you know? So for that
True,
reason, I'd
true.
have it in
Yeah,
C.
yeah, sure.
Um,
C works. Yep.
Spectral, on the other hand, I think is maybe like A plus. Crit is really really relevant. So if crit like wasn't being nerfed into the ground next patch, I wouldn't say nerfed into the ground, but just being quite heavily nerfed, I would say this item is maybe S plus, probably around S. But just because crit's probably going to take a little bit of a backseat, and this item isn't necessarily great against a kin size build, still A plus. But the reason I think it's A plus is it's very very good against the crit build specifically, and it's actually getting buffed next patch. So that's kind of funny that they nerf crit and buff this in the same patch. So for that reason, I'd say A plus. One of the better items at just making you feel tanky to the ADC.
Yeah, I mean, I love buying Spectral actually. The stats are insane. For the price, like 2100 gold, and you get like literally everything you want basically
Mm-hmm.
from a physical defense item. It is purely defensive, but it does the job so damn well. And you definitely don't want to like start with this item. I mean, because you probably want to counter build with it, but you probably could even buy it first and not feel too bad. So
Yeah.
I don't know, A plus for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Genji's.
Ooh, Genji's. Well, this is potentially like, yeah, it's like, well, it's on the same level as, I mean, I'd say maybe better than Breastplate, just because it fits into build slightly better. It gives straight up better stats too, and a better passive. It's just got it all, really.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is that it's on the magical side of things. So right now, there's not that many magical solos, although there might be. You never know. Uh, but there's like some other magical defense items that you really want, because this one is purely defensive. And normally, if you go 2 purely defensive items, like say if you do go Breastplate Genji's, you don't really do that much damage. You have to rely on your base damage, or if it's someone that you want to spam abilities on. So you're gonna have to couple it with like a Void Shield or something like that. Um, it does the job pretty well, though. I think it works super super well with ability-based characters, and the MP5 is really nice.
Yeah, it's like it's weird. The way I see magical items is there's actually a lot of good options, or a lot of options that you would want to purchase. But then there's also the fact that you don't even really need a lot of magical defense, like in general in Smite, right now, until maybe late game once they get like a lot of their pen and stuff online. So for that reason, like an Ansile Ringblade can kind of fit that job, or an Oni's, or Talisman is really sick right now, and it's pretty impossible to build Genjis and Talisman in a build just because you don't need that magical defense, and you don't like ever want to buy both of those for the most part. So it's just kind of hard to fit. The item itself does a ton of good things, and it is really good, especially on like these like CDR characters, and the passive can come in clutch. But it's just so there's just so many. Like our next item that we're going to talk about, Oni Hunters, is also really good. one of the few items that actually makes you pretty tanky with the damage bit and the passive, especially if you combine it with like Spirit Robe, or if you're just playing a character that has damage mitigation. So I would say it's pretty similar to Genji's. I think maybe like a 50-50 if you're not playing a character that necessarily needs Genji's, or if you're going to have CDR elsewhere in your build, like a Pridwin, then Oni Hunters is a nice combo with that. But also just like a pretty strong magical defense item. Honestly, like A plus, in my opinion.
Yeah, now that you mention it, by the way, the magical defense part of things, like it actually is really tough to fit in more than one magical defense item
Yeah,
because you probably want like an urchin or a mantle or something along those lines. Like a Pridwin also gives magical defense. Wingblade maybe is nice. Like there's so many things that you kind of just have room for one. So you have to pick like between probably Genji's, um, Onis, or like Talisman or Pestilence, I guess, if you need anti-heal. But those are like your four go-tos probably, and we're gonna get to them in just a bit. But yeah, Onis is basically if you don't need CDR, but you want one of the items from this item tree. And it works really, really well with the percent mid builds, like with the Sigil and Spirit Robe and whatnot.
yeah. It's there's just so many options. I guess one that it's not really an option too much for solo laners is Shoguns because it doesn't really make you tanky at all. It is like a decent support item, especially on these characters that want to like be like farming objectives and like an auto attack heavy comp. It's going to help you with that. But honestly, it's not quite a worse talisman these days. Talisman just gives you so many stats. But talisman is conditional on like killing minions and also killing enemy gods and stuff like that. So at least with Shoguns, you always have that passive. Like for example, if you just all run over to Fire Giant without killing any minions, you're gonna have like that extra attack speed aura. It's gonna be nice for shredding that down. But as far as solo goes, you're not really building this too much. Maybe on like Amaterasu, you could throw it into a build, and maybe Bologna. I think on those characters, even with them, you probably want Talisman over this. But um, it's still a decent support item. I would say A, but it's a little bit more niche. So maybe we throw B.
Yeah, I was gonna say B actually. I think it's like it's really hard to fit this item into a build and feel good about it. The problem is that the tank that buys this is sacking his build so bad. Like you just
Yeah,
have the
exactly.
worst stats ever on this item, and you're just doing it to like help other people. And it's not like ADC necessarily even needs attack speed these days. Like they're gonna have like 5,000% from their starter item or something. Uh, so yeah, I don't know. It's pretty niche. I don't really see it often. I mean, I actually don't even see it at all. Really, I think I've seen maybe a couple Shoguns. Maybe when I bought it, when I was like trolling with attack speed builds, but I don't know. It's good. It's just mm, there's not much room for it right now.
Yeah, and kind of
Same
similar.
with Bulwark,
Yeah,
actually. I think, yeah, I was gonna say, like, Bulwark, same thing. Just no room for this item. It's raw tankiness, but for magical sides of things. You kind of want your magical defense item to at least, like, cover some other aspects. So, like, Talisman gives you movement speed, Pestilence, anti-heal, Oni Hunters is mitigation and mana, Genji's is mana and cooldown reduction. Bulwark is just health.
yeah.
And you don't really care that much about that stat, so it's pretty niche.
Yeah, shields in general are a little bit like shields are really powerful, but sometimes they can be a little bit depressing as well. Like, for example, there's an interaction with this item in Vamana where if you buy this item of Vamana and you ults at any point in a team fight where you would probably be getting the passive from Bulwark, it literally just cancels it out because Vamana gets like a shield regeneration, so it immediately destroys the item. And there's a lot of other interactions like Shell and stuff that can be awkward with stuff like Bulwark. Um, Unfortunately, just when you compare it to the other magical options that you have, it's just not really uh, Heartward is a little bit weird. It's actually, I think, worse in something like a Sovereignty or a Thieves, just because there's less magical damage across the map in general, and like it's your mage isn't really your magical or your mage and your ADC aren't really going to be getting hit by the enemy mage for the most part in team fights, unless they're like heavily out of position. So if they have like a Hebo jungle, you can get some value out of this, and also if their Guardian support is diving pretty hard, like say it's a Cerberus or something, maybe like you get some value out of like a Heartward, but it's definitely much less valuable than something like a Thebes and a Sovereignty. I'm honestly tempted to throw it into B. What do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna actually say B. I think this item. I mean, I rarely see it purchased. I don't really see a point to it. Like it's kind of counteractive to what you're trying to do it to begin with. Like if you're, as you said, like if you're peeling, like the enemy mage probably not gonna do damage to you anyways. I think it might be good against like some artillery mages like Toth or Baba Yaga stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
good shout.
just because of how conditional it is in terms of being good in general, I think it's deserves the B tier spot.
And then Pestilence, I would say, what do you think, A?
Pestilence. Yeah, as I was saying earlier with Contagion, I think Contagion is just a better Pestilence. The only unlucky thing about Contagion is that its competition is very strong. But as standalone items, I think Pestilence is just worse than Contagion. Like, they do exactly the same thing, but Contagion has mana MP5, and costs less. Pestilence is just kind of the nerfs that it took like a couple years back are still to this day very, very noticeable, and I think it might be kind of putting the item in a bad spot.
Yeah. And then it just has so much. It has a lot of competition as well, and it's just it's just one of those items that you kind of are forced into building sometimes because they just have so much heal sustain that you're just like, oh, okay, well, I guess I gotta go this. And those kind of items never really feel that great. So, uh, honestly, maybe you could argue in B tier just because of that. But on the other hand, Talisman Energy, this is the opposite of Pestilence in my opinion. This is an item that you always feel good building for the most part, just because it gives you so many gosh dang things. I wouldn't say that's necessarily better than Genji's or Oni's. I think they kind of all do different things. Genji's is for like CDR characters. Oni's is like for like a mid build where you're actually trying to be tanky. And Talisman is just like this catch-all magical defense item that can give you so many different stats: MP5, attack speed, movement speed, tons of health. Honestly, after saying it out loud, maybe this is an S tier item. What do you think?
Yeah, I was actually gonna say S tier because to me this is like the go-to magical defense item right now.
Yeah,
Like, it gives you everything. If you, I mean, I've been loving the build where you go Void Shield, Talisman of Energy on, like, say Osiris, or just, I mean, honestly anyone, but I guess you kind of need CDR on some characters. But if you didn't need CDR, I'd just go this item. Like, it's more about being kind of forced into a specific build, not because you don't really want this item. Like, you always kind of want this item, but sometimes you just can't buy it, I guess.
yeah.
Um, like, it's insane. It gives so many things, and one real nice thing about it is the movement speed actually in solo lane. Like, if you clear a wave and then go proxy, like, you're gonna be proxying faster because you're there faster, and then you're gonna be invading faster, and like, just everything happens so much quicker when you buy it in solo lane. And it's one of the only, I think, movement speed sources on top of Golden Blade that hasn't been nerfed.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
unlike Golden Blade, this item's actually very good. So
Actually been buffed because after the last patch
um,
they made it instantly stack off of enemy god death. So yeah, I was about to say that it actually is one of the few items that gives you, what does it give you, 12% movement speed, 6 stacks, 2%
yeah,
each. Yeah,
12%.
that's pretty good, and something that's not pretty good.
Celestial Legion.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole item tree actually, to me belongs in either C or B. Like this, it's they've been nerfed like very far back, and I feel like this item tree has just been forgotten. Like, I don't remember seeing any changes that involve this item tree at all.
Tyrannical was
Uh,
buffed going into the season, right? But the concept behind Tyrannical is just, I think, horrible. It's so
yeah,
expensive,
like
and by the time you buy it, you literally get no value out of it for the most part.
the concept behind Tyrannical is horrible. So you want it to be like bloated in stats, but that's just bad to begin with. Like, we don't want those kinds of items.
Yeah,
The concept, I like Jades, but it just doesn't reduce enough. Like, 20 is just nothing,
yeah, they nerfed it
and
too hard.
the stats aren't impressive anyways. It's like a really, really bad Void Shield, like absurdly bad Void Shield. Um, and then Celestial Legion Helm is probably the best in the group, but it's not even good enough to kind of just,
I'd throw it in B
be
maybe.
even a, I guess, yeah, I don't know. It's not noticeably better, I guess, but I think it just is better. Stats on it are pretty nice, and it actually has a passive, unlike the other two. And it does
Yeah,
give MP5, so you can kind of, like, you can fit it into builds and be happy about it, but it's pretty niche, and it doesn't really have too much of a place in builds. But I guess at least it has more of a place than the other two, so.
yeah, it gives you more power than Jade, so it actually helps Guardians a little bit early game or Mages early game, especially if you're trying to farm in solo. But I mean, they're all just kind of depressing. The only thing Celestial has going for it, I think, maybe over these other two items, is that well, all these items do this, but there's not a lot of options for Guardians or Mages that give them physical defense and power. And Guardians in general are a little bit slower early game, so it's kind of nice to have a little bit of extra power, or maybe CDR so you can actually clear stuff, or maybe like a Mystical to help you clear things. And all these items don't really don't really perform that job that you would actually want them to. So they're all kind of all pretty bad, I think. On the flip side, binding S tier.
Oh, the new binding, or no, oh yeah, sorry, fuck, wait, no, wrong item. Binding, probably S tier. I don't know.
Maybe A plus. I don't know. I really like this item. I mean, it's built in a few roles, both in support and solo. Obviously, you can only build it on magicals. That's where you're going to be building it completely. But you could honestly throw this in some jungle builds, even if you're playing like a magical jungler like Hebo. It could be like your single like bruiser item. It can really help with that kind of build. But it is but mostly in support and solo. But it's a really, really good item. It gives you some nice little stats for only 1,700 gold. One of the few bridge items in the game left at 1,700 gold that it still feels pretty good to build. And it gives you flat pen, or I guess pen reduction in the passive, which is good for everybody on your team. And if you're playing a Guardian, having a flat pen or flat reduction or anything like that when you're diving is actually really nice because your base damage is so high that it actually comes in pretty clutch. So I like this item a lot. I'm building it pretty much every game on something like Cerberus. You could probably throw it in like a Sobek build and help you out pretty good as well. But I think it's pretty good. Probably the best like bridge item, or maybe the only bridge item left in the game.
Yeah, it is actually the only bridge item left in the game, but it is very good though. I agree. Like it has a really really nice stats. Like you don't really feel like you're wasting the gold buying this bridge item. You actually feel like it really benefits the build a lot. It doesn't have any HP, but luckily you can get HP like from a lot of other sources, so it's no big deal. I think the item is really really strong. Yeah, A plus for sure. I wouldn't put it S just because it's not over the top in any way. I
Yeah,
feel like it feels nice, but it's you don't feel like you're just the strongest guy ever when you buy it.
yeah, that's true. Don't foul.
Ooh, Stone of Foul. Yeah, that is their reworked item. That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yep.
um,
S.
dude, I mean, I think this. First of all, the stats are actually kind of decent. Now, it is comparable to. Actually, no way. The stats are really bad. What the fuck? Stats are like Stone of Binding, but bad because the price is 800 gold more. I think maybe because of this alone, you might not see it too much. But
Oh yeah.
the passive is very, very nice, though. I like the passive. With you auto attack, and per auto you get 2% mid, stacks up to 3 times, and when you get all three, it doubles, and you get some CCR. So you get 12% mid and 20% CCR. And from what I'm understanding, this doesn't really have a cooldown, so you can kind of permanently have it up as long as you maintain it well. Um, the only downside to this item, I think, is it might be awkward for certain characters to actually proc it,
Yeah.
but I think the passive is insane, and I think the combo potential with some of these other items is going to be insane as well.
Yeah.
Voice crack.
Imagine this item on Athena though with your reach. You're just throwing it out, getting damage mitigation. I bet you it's gonna be pretty nice on her. Like you said, there's some guardians that it's just not gonna really work well on, like say Cthulhu solo. When you go into your ult, you literally can't proc it, so you're gonna get no value out of this item. There's other characters in solo that just aren't gonna be auto attacking all that much in a team fight. Um, so kind of loses some value there. But I do think the passive is pretty nice. Maybe we throw it in A just because the base stats combined with maybe more niche passive that maybe doesn't work on every guardian. There's other items that like Stone of Binding works on every
Yeah.
single guardian. Like can't really go wrong with it. This is gonna be more niche, so I'd say it's A, but I think it would be strong on those certain characters, like especially like Athena. And moving on, something like Voidstone, I guess, is maybe similar to Binding, where you can build it on every single guardian and feel pretty good about it. It's kind of like the equivalent to Void Shield. It's a little less valuable just because physical defense is a little bit more valuable than magical defense across the map for a while now, but it's still nice. Build it on every guardian, feel pretty good. You could throw this into some support builds, and it would, like, let's say you have like a double guardian comp, or maybe you're playing with your magical backline and you're trying to shred the people in front of you. It's pretty nice. Get some okay stats for 2250. I think its cost is 150 health, 60 magical prot, and 20 power. I think if it get, I think it's gonna be 40 power actually. Yeah, it's 40 power. I think if it gave more magical power, it'd be like kind of busted. But honestly, I think it's just kind of like A plus.
Yeah, I mean, this is the old build where you go breastplate voidstone. It's still probably a go-to for our guardians.
Yeah.
Breastplate voidstone never fails. Honestly, is the all reliable.
Hmm.
Um, Voidstone. I mean, I find it a little weird that Voidstone is 10%, like prot reduction, but Void Shield is 15. Even though Void Shield gets way more value and more things do physical damage, but Void Stone, which is the 10% one,
Yeah,
gets
it is
it doesn't
weird.
really have that much value. And it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. But regardless, it's very good still. Like it's literally just Void Shield, but mirrored for magicals. It's just that that magical aspect of it is lowering it down slightly.
Mhm. This is actually an item, both Void Shield and Void Stone. Whenever you're playing a tank and you hit another tank, you actually feel the benefit of both of these, and especially in like team fights and stuff. Bancross.
Oh, oh, by the way, I was gonna just say for Stone of Fall that I agree on this A placement just simply because of these stats and the price. Actually, like this kind of ridiculous. This is a crime, dude.
To
We're getting scammed with this item.
be fair, we're getting mail renewals, so maybe we can take some
True.
time to see how Stone of Foul buffs or whatever.
But yeah, Bancrofts. This is pretty niche. I mean, honestly, I rarely see this item, and the only time I've seen it is when Paul played Hippo. uh,
Anubis maybe.
so yeah, you can see it on Anubis. But like, thing is, it's not a bad item. It's just I don't think you can fit it properly because I feel like you very specifically need certain items as a mid laner right now that you don't have much room to just put a Bancrofts in there.
Yeah, it's just it's so hard to fit into a build. There's like for the past couple years, there's been a lot of pen builds where you see like divines, obsidians. Like last year, Soul Eater had pen on it with like combined with like Spear of the Magus or Spear of Death. So there's just it's hard to fit lifesteal into mage builds a lot of the time, and obviously it doesn't give any percent pen. And if you're like playing a mana hungry god, you probably just want like a Radahidi or like a Doom Orb. Doom Orb will give you more power most of the time as long as you're full health, and it'll also make you have infinite mana and also make you rotate a little bit faster. So sustain in mid lane always hasn't been like that important. So lifesteal items there have always been kind of meh. Um, but on the another hand, Pythags is more like versatile, just because you can build it in other roles. You could throw this on a support build late game. It's going to help everybody out in the team fights and the objectives. You could throw this on a solo build and it'll feel pretty decent, even though percent pen is a little less valuable than flat pen for tanks. It's still actually pretty good this year, just because access to like the aura items and Sentinel's Embrace, and just like people having a little bit more defense across the board. I think Pythag's actually pretty good. Probably around A tier. It's just more of a niche item. I don't think it's something that you buy every single game and feel amazing about, but it's definitely something that is pretty good in the right scenario.
Yeah, I think Pythags right now kind of fills in what Bancrofts used to do. Like the it gives you lifesteal, some power, and it gives you the pen HP. Like it gives you so many good stats that you just kind of feel good about. It's not over the top in any way, but it's nice. I think the A tier kind of describes it perfectly.
Soul Gem S plus.
Told him, Jesus. I mean, it's pretty disgusting. Yeah, potentially S plus,
At least
S
S.
or S plus, I would say. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The stats are pretty crazy for the price. Like it gives CDR, lifesteal, power, and HP. I guess it doesn't give pen. That's too bad. I guess. But
Shit item doesn't have
the
6 stats.
passive, yeah, shit, garbage. The passive is insane though. Jesus Christ, that passive is so damn good. I think it's one of the best passives in the game and one of the most fun passives in the game. And I like that it's strong.
I'm throwing an S
Honestly,
plus.
I think it deserves to be strong because it's just simply that fun.
Yeah, it is a really fun item on the fun tier. It's definitely up there, and I think this is built in almost every single mage build. Maybe I don't even know. I can't even really think of one that doesn't really have it. But you can build this in the jungle as well if you're playing magicals there. And it's just really good. It has tons of crazy stats in the passive. I don't know about you, Deathwalker, when you're diving people, but sometimes the passive literally saves people on diving, and it's just so annoying because they actually heal so much from it if you don't have anti-heal, with all the scaling that they have and everything. And yeah, it's definitely
Yep. I mean,
frustrating diving into
I
it.
actually hate diving. I actually hate diving without anti-heal lately. Like it's
Yeah.
so annoying because I mean, not just soul gem, but like soul gem coupled with everything. Like you think like, I can deal with this hunter's lifesteal, and then boom, soul gem heals him, and it's like, okay, I guess I can't.
Yeah, yeah.
And then back up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just very very strong, and I feel like it's actually a game changer for a lot of situations. I mean, oftentimes, like I'm falling back, because I'm really low HP, and then I just randomly get healed by the soul gem from my mage, and that's like, oh wait, I mean, I guess I could kind of fight.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I guess my mid lane mage is a healer now. But yeah, and then
Yep.
moving on to Typhons. This is another item that just not that great. It requires you to have other lifesteal items in the build to even be that effective or that efficient. And like I said before, magical lifesteal really isn't that prevalent. Um, just in Smite in general, the only characters you ever see this on is maybe like a lifesteal Hebo jungle build or like a Anubis build with this. Um, but other than that, it's very, very niche. But again, I mean, if you do have a lot of magical lifesteal and you do go to this item, you are healing a ton, and you do a decent amount of damage because it does have 10% pen on it. But it's just way too niche to be anything higher than B, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's too hard to fit into a build. That's the problem. Like you have to go another lifesteal item with this, otherwise it's not very good. So you're either like coupling it with Vamp Shroud, lifesteal boots, Pythags, and then this. But then at that point you're committed 4 items to make one item, or 3 items rather, to make one item good.
Yeah.
Like it's hard. The combo potential is there. I like playing around with builds with Typhons, but it's just too hard to make it work well and too hard to fit into a build, I think.
Yep. What do you think of Sharon's?
I actually love this item. I prefer this much more over Shard. Shard is like slightly more reliable, but I just think this one's slightly more fun. It's the Urchin version, I guess, of
Yeah.
damage items. Where you kind of get like a little fun passive when you keep killing people. You get some nice sustain, percent pen. You get some movement speed, a little bit of power. Like it's got a lot of fun stats on it, but they're all also like pretty strong and effective. So I think A plus. Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of it's the major percent pen option for mages that aren't going to use Obsidian Shard as well because they don't like rely on just like this one initial burst damage ability or and then also like you said, it just has a lot more, it has more stats than Obsidian. So if you're trying to get some stats out of your item and you need that, then Sharon's is the way to go. Chronos Pendant, I think, for a lot of people watching, probably like 95% of the people watching that are just like, maybe platinum or below or diamond or below, they probably think this item is like busted. Everyone's always thought Chronos Pendant is really good. But honestly, I don't think like CDR for mages isn't necessarily lacking. You can have Soul Gem, you can have Spirit Deso, and this item doesn't give you any pen. It only gives you 100 power, which you can get from other items a little bit more. It's not like horrible on certain characters like Janus. This is just like a really core item, and it's really nice on him. But for the most part, I think it's just kind of like A tier. Maybe a little underwhelming across mage builds, just because just doing more damage with your initial round of abilities a lot of the time is just nice and a little bit more impactful. So it does allow you the ability to overcap CDR with the passive, because it reduces a flat reduction every 10 seconds, which is nice. But some people may hate me for this, but I personally think it's A. Do you think it's any higher?
No. I mean, the thing is, this item is really fun, and I can kind of understand why people build it a lot. It's fun. It feels good to have. It feels good to like just spam your abilities out, and you also get the MP5. Like it allows you to spam abilities. But that's all it does. It allows you. It doesn't really make them much stronger. It has a good bit of power tied to it, but it doesn't have any stat that actually matters
Yeah.
other than the power. Like it doesn't have any pen. It doesn't have any like bonus damage attached to it. It's literally just like you know use your abilities more, I guess.
Yeah.
They're weaker, but you can use them more. That's the trade-off. But I mean, it's by no means bad. Just not crazy. It's just a feel-good item.
You do more.
I think. I mean, do more kind of in the same fashion. It's just a feel-good item. Uh, thing is, like, the only difference between Doom Orb and Chronos Pendant, in my opinion, is just like rather than having cooldown, you're like slightly stronger, but you also get the movement speed, so you can like go around the map faster. I don't really see it too often. I think it's again more of like a feel good item, more like fun oriented rather than just being straight up good. I like the place that it's in though. Like I don't want to see it every game, but I think it's nice that you can build this item and not feel completely horrible about it. You still feel the effects of it and you still feel like your spells are pretty strong.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of been replaced a little bit by how good Ratatouille is. And like usually these days in mage builds, you kind of have like this one item that just gives you a lot of power and MP5, and then the rest of your build you need either like You need some flat pen, you need some percent pen in the items, or maybe you like have some utility elsewhere. So it's kind of been replaced a little bit by Ratatouille, and since that's up on next, I honestly think Ratatouille is like S tier, and that's probably why Doomorph's fallen off a little bit from last season. Um, and Ratatouille, I mean, if it was the previous patch where it had more power, I think maybe even S plus would be where it's at. But I think this, this is maybe justifiably really, really good item. I think maybe it's still a little bit too strong. Having percent pan and all that power in the passive that just makes you do more damage as your scalings and everything is a really, really strong for mages. But I think maybe it's justifiable that mages have like a really good item like this, especially because Soul Reaver is kind of, I wouldn't say horrible now, but it's definitely fallen off a bit. So I think Ratatouille's S tier. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the S tier. I also want to point out that like if you look at the S tier, these are all like the core items behind the build,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're supposed to be here though. Like these, I don't think these items need a nerf by any means. Like I think they just enable the roles in their own ways right now.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, we actually haven't seen. Wait, where's no jungle item?
Oh yeah. I
Oh, damn,
guess.
poor jungle,
I
dude.
guess
Jeez.
Ansile is
Okay.
mostly a jungle item right now.
Actually, no, wait. What the hell? Junglers have S plus. They have a stone cutting
Yeah,
as well,
that's
don't
been cutting
they?
in Ansile, so they're chilling. They're chilling.
True, 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 true. Okay, yeah, they're chilling, they're chilling, they're chilling. But yeah, I mean, the Roto to Hoodie is just a build enabler for mid laners. That's what kind of makes them good right now. Kind of
You know what?
like it has everything they want.
Oh, now that
What?
I was sorry about the jungle items, I actually think maybe we up shifters to A plus just because it's really viable in jungle right now with like an Ansile build. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
kind
Sure.
of, kind
Sure.
of. I kind of didn't really think of
I
that.
guess yeah. Like Glad Shield's better in solo, but Shifters is better in jungle. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I see it.
Work with that.
But yeah, speaking of mage items, I guess. Divine Ruin. I think this is literally just brawlers, but the magical version. Like it's in my mind this on the same level, A plus probably. I think I guess one reason why you'd maybe want to put it like slightly lower on the list is because I think mid laners might feel forced to buy this item.
yeah, it's one of those items.
Like you don't really want to. You don't necessarily want it for the stats, but rather for the anti-heal. But it's like, who else is gonna buy then if we don't have our mid laner buy anti-heal?
Yeah,
A little bit of a forced situation here, but then again, I mean, junglers would rather buy Jotuns than brawlers, probably like 75% of the times if they didn't need the anti-heal, so I'd rate them the same.
yeah. Another necessary item. Healing is obviously really important. Sustain in general, and it's actually like I think mages have complained because they feel mandatory buying it, and it definitely feels bad. I understand that, but at least the item, like, you don't really lose that much damage from going it. Like, it's got some flat pen on it. It's got some a decent amount of power, and if you ever hit the enemy jungle with this, you're gonna feel the impact of it a little bit. So definitely just one of those like necessary evil items. And it especially feels bad. I know this feels bad for mid lane mages because they buy the tier 2 of this item and then they look at Spear of the Maggots and Spear of Death and they're like, oh my god, these two items are so sick. I wish I could buy this. And then they're like, oh, there's a lot of healing on the enemy team, so I actually have to buy Divine. And it's really hard to build both a lot of the time because you need some percent pen from some sources. So um, it just kind of feels bad for that regard. But moving on to percent pen, I think Obsidian Shard kind of just A. I think it's a maybe A plus for just because it's like kind of a catch-all obsidian or catch-all percent pen item, but I actually don't really love this item too much, and I personally think Sharon's is a little bit better, and there's also a lot of mages that maybe don't make the greatest use out of obsidian, just the passive itself. The problem is, I guess there's not a ton of percent pen options for mages too viable, so maybe for that reason it should be A plus. What do you think?
I mean, I kind of rated the same as Titan's Bane. Like, I personally would just go Karen's coin all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really value the 10% passive too much. Like, if it was 20 for a mage, I'd maybe value it a lot more. But because it's 10 and Titan's Bane is 20, I don't really value Shard too much. Granted, like one thing about Shard is you buy it, that's the item. There's like no hidden chest behind the
Yeah.
wall. Whereas Karen's coin, like you have to stack it up in order to get some of the benefits from it. But I think having the potential of getting movement speed and all the nice sustain is slightly better than just having like probably less than 50 more damage every 10 seconds.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Spear of Deso. I mean, I honestly rate this item the same as Divine Ruin. Like, People probably think this item is like the absolute best thing ever for mid laners. But every time I see people just buy this over Divine, I kind of like cringe, you know, like I die inside when they
Yeah.
buy Desto instead of Divine and the enemy team has healing. Like I'm like, are you serious? Did you really want to lose the game? But it's a decent. I don't think the buff to it actually did anything crazy. I think it did more for like a feel thing rather than actually directly buff the item to like a super strong level. Thing is, this item is a win more item.
Yeah.
Like if you kill a guy, your cooldowns are getting lowered. But I mean, the guy's already dead, so do you really need your cooldowns to be lowered then?
Yeah.
The stats are pretty decent though. I guess that's why it would be A plus.
Yeah, in general, with more items are they're kind of hard to justify being super good just because unless they have crazy base stats, and the base stats are on it are pretty nice. But like you said, it's so hard when you buy the tier 2 and with all the healing. It's like so hard to buy the tier 2 of these items and be like, can I actually even go Spear of Death? So I almost always need Divine. Um, and of course, you'd rather just be able to actually kill people without them healing than you would actually be able to kill them and get the passive. If you're not anti-healing them and they're not dying, then Spear of Deso is kind of useless for that. So obviously, Divine is kind of just the go-to in a meta like this. But maybe down the road they can. I don't know. What if they threw like anti-heal on Spear of Deso? um,
Yes, true.
Similar, I think, in a similar vein, I feel like Spear of the Mag is actually a sick item. You do so much damage with it on Guardians, on supports, even if you throw it into a mid lane build, if it's possible, which is really hard to do because of Divine and Spear Deso. But I think just because it's more versatile, it's A+. If you were just talking about mid lane, I'd probably throw this a little bit lower. But since it's versatile and you can build it in solo, you can build it even support role, I would say it's A+. This is a really good damage item for just like killing squishies.
Yeah, I actually love Spear of the Magus. I love it when you have at least like one on your team because that means everybody's just doing more damage to like the one guy that is marked, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like you do want to focus a guy. Like say you do say a couple Spear of the Magus with like an upgraded Sunder, right? Like that guy's taking so much damage now. Um, I mean, again, yeah, as you're saying, like just competing with Divine Ruin and killing the guy faster, I think might be in my mind it might be better than Deso, but it does also have like slightly worse stats. Um, I don't know. I like it a lot, but you know, it's not crazy. A plus, I think it's what it deserves. Book of the Dead. I was about to say this is shit tier. This is shit tier undoubtedly. I don't think I've ever seen this item, and if I ever see this item, I probably left the game already. Like this mean if you go Book of the Dead, that means you have to go Book of Thoth. But if you go Book of Thoth, you are kind of obligated to play around the Book of Thoth in terms of damage, not in terms of survivability. So like you have to boost this Book of Thoth. You have to do something about this book to make it be better. You have to get some pen somewhere. You have to get, you know, you probably need Soul Reaver, Poly, stuff like that, like that give mana a lot of power that you like just one shot people. But then the Book of the Dead just kind of counteracts that playstyle completely. And the survivability from it isn't even the type you want. Like it's a proc when you're already dying. So like say you get dropped to like half HP, then you get the proc. But I don't know. It's not even a lot of HP. I think it's like what is it, 20% of your max mana?
Yeah, it can probably add up to
So
like
you'd need
400 or something.
yeah. It's not even that much HP. It has no good stats on it. And yeah, I mean just the proc itself. Like wouldn't you rather just have an item that just straight up gives you more HP than something that gives you a shield when
Ethereal.
you drop low?
Ethereal is
Yeah, like
just better in
ethereal
every way.
stuff, like that just straight up gives you more HP anyways, like and it gives you mana, so it works with the book build anyways. Like I don't know, this is kind of pointless. This item,
Yeah,
just trash. Yeah.
and I think the major thing is if you are going this item, you need Book of Thoth, and if you're going Book of Thoth and this, you have boots, and then you have your starter item, which maybe you're going Archmage Gem, or maybe you're going something like that. You basically have 4 items mandatory in the build, and now you only have 2 slots for pen options like Divine or Rada Tuhidi. You have only 2 slots for something like a Soldier if you need that in the build. Maybe you want to have a tank item like a Mantle late game. So it just hinders the build so much, and it requires you to have this build that kind of lacks in the stuff that you need the pen. So I think Book of the Dead, honestly, shit tier, probably deserves a rework. Book of Thoth kind of taking a backseat as well to a lot of the power options in the game. Rata Tahiti, Doom Orb, stuff like that. Some of the other items actually just give you a ton of power. in general right now, like Spear of Deso, and like stuff like that just gives you a lot of that power that you need. And also it's really slow, like you just mentioned. You're gonna have to really worry about like fighting around mid lane in the early game because of this. And if you go Book of Thoth and you're like fighting into a jungler who has Ansile and just pressuring you all of the early to mid game, it's gonna feel pretty hard to play the game. I think it's probably like a B tier item. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with the B tier. Thing is with this item, uh, like a lot of the other items, like say an S, A plus, these are build enablers. Like you have this in your build, and then you are allowed to like build something else because this item covers a lot of aspects. Like Rado Tahuti, it covers damage and mana sustain. Like it gives you the pen, it gives you the power, it gives you the bonus power if somebody's low HP to like kill someone off.
Yeah.
Book of Thoth, it doesn't. It's the opposite of a build enabler. Like you have to build to make the book work. Like you
Yeah.
start with this item, but then you build every other item because you want the book to be strong. Like not the other way around. Uh, it's obviously not bad, but it's just there's really no reason to buy this item right now because of the way you have to build around it. I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe a role that it filled in the past is that you basically get infinite mana from it, but Do More kind of gives you that, and like Totem plus Rada Tahiti basically gives you that. And yeah, you don't even
I
really
mean,
need
even Coin gives you MP5, right? Like when you get some.
Yeah, if you go Sands of Time, you basically have infinite mana, so it's just like just kind of taking a huge backseat to all those items. And then honestly, Poly I think is pretty good, but underbought. What do you think?
Mm, I actually like Poly. I think it's slightly better than Book because I think you can kind of fit it into more things. Like I don't think Poly really relies on an item. This is like a build ender, right?
Hmm.
Um, you don't really need a specific build for Poly to work. It's always just gonna kind of do its own thing, but it's not crazy strong though. That's the only thing. And that one auto, like if you do miss it, obviously you don't have a passive, but luckily it's back in 3 seconds, so you don't have to worry about it too much. I think it's a nice little bonus to the burst. It's just straight up worse than Soul Gem though. Like it's
Yeah, it
it does the
is.
same thing essentially, but it's just bad compared to Soul Gem.
That is true. It is. I never even thought of that comparison. I think it's a fun item though. On the fun tier list, it's definitely up there. Kind of similar to Boomba's, where it's like kind of got like some cool little scenarios where you can do stuff with your build and play certain characters to proc the poly. But if you miss the auto, which is I'm not saying it's likely, but it's definitely a possibility when you're in the middle of a team fight. It's gonna have no passive, and it's more of just the end of the build thing because it works really well off of having a bunch of magical power in the rest of your build. So Soul Reaver, I would say probably like A. After they took the percent pen away from it, it's kind of just like this necessary evil item where you kind of need to build this in order to hit the front line that's in front of you to actually do a decent amount of damage. But now that it doesn't have pen, you kind of have to go like kind of have to like throw in like an obsidian shard to even make this do a decent amount of damage, or like a Ratajidi. But I would say it's still like kind of a necessary evil. Percent health damage in general is kind of a necessary evil in Smite with the tank. So um, I don't know. I would say A, but what do you think?
I agree with A actually. I think maybe with the percent pen it'll be like A plus because I think with the thing is with the percent pen like you could actually even build it in solo lane right as like a damage option. I feel like
Yeah, you could.
because the bonus damage is magical. But right now because the bonus damage is magical and you don't get any pen from it, you have to sort of boost the item in order to make it work well. I think the combo between Rod and Soul River kind of even it out to what it was before, anyways. So I don't think this item's necessarily worse in a combo, but on its own it is, yeah. So rather than being A plus, I think A is where it belongs.
I don't know if you guys can hear Odin. He's going
Oh, I can
crazy.
I can definitely hear.
Sorry about that. And then on the other end, here, Priya. uh, on the other end, I think Ethereal is actually pretty insane. I think. Oh, it's you. It's you. What do you think,
Yeah,
Ethereal?
yeah, it's E-Staff. I mean, this is actually the go-to like damage item for solo lane guardians or just like solo lane magical damage dealers. It's also a very very good defensive option for mid laners that also like kind of maintains some damage properties. Stealing away health is really really nice. I personally like to combo E-Staff like when if you go a lot of items that don't have health in solo lane, then you just slap an E staff in there, and it kind of covers up for it.
Hmm.
I think the item's versatility alone boosts it up pretty high up the list, and the stats are just kind of nice too.
Yeah. think it's a really good item. Like you said, it's even good as like that survivability option for mid lane mages or magical jungles. And throw this on the end of your solo build, it's really good. Throw this on the end of your support build as a guardian, it's pretty good and very versatile. Definitely gives you a lot of health. So that's nice. I mean, if you're hitting the right targets, obviously. Um, but Gem of ISO, I wouldn't say quite shit tier. Maybe I would actually, but I don't know. This item has just been nerfed into the ground. Not only that, but if you ever build into this tree and decide to go Gem of ISO instead of Ethereal, you're pretty much just trolling. Even on the characters that you built this on before, like Poseidon, it's just not worth it anymore. You'd rather just have more damage, whether that's through pen or whether that's through just extra power. And if you are going that survivability option, you might as well go Ethereal or maybe just like a pure tank item like Mantle. The passive is slightly noticeable, but Wingblade is really good right now, so you could always just have a Wingblade in your build, and Gem Vice is pretty much useless. I don't know. Maybe I should throw it in shit tier. What do you think?
I mean, I think it might deserve a spot in shit tier. Actually, I don't know if I've ever seen it lately. I think maybe I've seen people buy it on like Guardians and stuff, but I don't know. I don't think it's very good, anyways. Like on the Guardians that you want to buy it on, they probably have decent CC to begin with.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like they've kind of killed this item with the nerf to the passive. I think when the passive was like more slow and last longer, I think it was kind of nice because you could like apply it and they would feel it for longer rather than pretty much the moment they don't get hit, they just don't have the slow on them anymore.
Yeah.
And the stats aren't impressive, anyways. Like, I think, well, no, it is like E-Staff stats basically, right? But just with a really, really bad passive.
Yeah.
So yeah, you are trolling if you're going this instead of E-Staff, actually.
I think it has less CCR as well. I think Ethereal has 20%, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe I'm wrong. And then Gem actually has 10. I'm pretty sure, but
Yeah, no, you are right. You are right.
yeah, it's kind of troll. But then moving on to Rod of Asclepius.
Rod of Asclepius, I would say it's B because it's pretty niche. Like, it's when you compare Rod of Asclepius and Caduceus Shield, like, what is the purpose of this item at that point,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's just they're essentially like trying to do the same thing, but Cat Shield just has straight up better stats and is less costly than Rod of Asclepius. Like even on healers, you don't want to buy Rod of Asclepius actually.
Yeah, you want Rod
Because
to Hitty.
you might as well, yeah, you might as well just buy a power item that lets you heal more to begin with straight up scaling rather than the bonus. Like have your soul inner by Caduceus Shield, dude. Like
Yeah.
don't buy Rod of Asclepius. I mean, maybe because of that, I'd even say C tier, dude. Like I just don't think this item is very good or very useful.
Yeah, honestly, Cat Shield is just like Rod of Asclepius gives you some offensive stats and some defensive stats, but not like neither are actually that great. Whereas Cat Shield is like really honest and true, and like what it's giving you, it gives you a ton of like prots. Doesn't give you a lot of health, but 35 of each prot. It gives you some health, gives you some power, and then the nice passive. And it's like this item just fits so much better for tanks. If Rod of Asclepius had like similar stats where it had 35 of each prot, but just for guardians, and it had like 50 magical power, it would probably shoot up to A plus in line with Cat Shield. Because then on your guardian solos, on maybe some of your mid lane mages or whatever, maybe in support or whatever, you wouldn't feel bad building this. But since it doesn't even give you that great of offensive stats, and it definitely doesn't give you any really good defensive stats, it just always kind of feels bad to build. I would just say because healing is so prevalent, and let's say, I don't know, somebody on the, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to, but somebody on the team that doesn't buy a CAD shield, you could throw this on the build plus a Rada Tahiti, and you actually would heal a decent amount. But yeah, I mean, you could argue it's easily like C, B tier, just not that great of an item. And in a similar vein, Warlocks, I mean, this item is so weird. They made it still stacks. The weirdest thing about this item is that you still have to stack it, but it barely gives you any health. After you fully stack this item, you get 75, I think it's 75 extra health. And like way back in the day, this was like the signature, I'm going to be a little bit more survivable while also getting some damage. Now it does give you a lot of damage. I think you get like 140 power from it plus 10% pen, which is pretty nice, but it just doesn't really make sense as an item. That you're gonna have to stack that up. It's not even gonna give you more survivability than something like Ethereal or any of like a pure tank item would. So I don't know. I think it's just way too greedy for mages, and in every other role you really can't build it. You can't really build this on guardians. in solo because they're already kind of slow early game, and then yeah, I don't know. I would say C probably.
Yeah, it's probably C. Like it's again, it's like no point to this item. Like if you compare it, I mean, honestly, just this whole item tree for some reason, you could literally just compare this whole item tree to Ethereal Staff, and every time you buy one of the other items, like just what's the point? You know, like why would you buy Sash over E Staff? Why would you buy Asclepius over E Staff? I guess maybe for the healing, but like, why would you buy Gem over E Staff? Like, none of it adds up.
Yeah,
And Rod of Tahuti, or sorry, not Rod of Tahuti. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess Rod of Tahuti is just straight up better, right? It has the same power, the pen, but it has a passive. It doesn't give you the 200 health, but it's not like 200 health is a lot to begin with.
yeah,
And you get every stat instantly, and you get MP5.
yeah.
So Warlocks just there really is no purpose to this item right now. It doesn't even have an identity. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, I think what some people might say is like with everything that we're saying is like, why can't you go both? Like, why can't you go Warlocks and Ethereal? Why can't you go Warlocks, Ethereal plus Gem? And the answer is that there's just so many necessary items and builds. Like, you need your percent pen, you need stuff like Divine Ruin. You're obviously going to have boots and probably have a starter item upgrade. So you really only have like 2 or 3 open slots to get creative in a lot of builds. And when that's the case, you can't really just go like 3 of these items. You kind of just need one. And then when you think about only getting one, you just have to compare how good they are, and you're like, well, Ethereal is just the best. So, and then Demonic.
Was it my turn?
Yeah, I think it's you. Did I talk about Warlocks? Yeah, it's you.
I forgot. Okay. All right. Well, demonic. I mean, magical ADCs right now. I don't think I see them at all.
Yeah,
And if even if I mean I don't know, dude. I think demonic kind of got butchered a little bit. Uh, like they kind of killed the stats. It's okay. I think maybe like if it was on a magical ADC, I guess you'd put it in like A tier. But I guess in general, this item is just B tier because it really just fits magical ADC.
yeah.
Um,
I think all these
so
items
I don't
depend
know.
on the meta. Like, we're not really in a
Actually, just maybe just put them all in B.
yeah.
Honestly, like they literally
The only
you
one I
only
wouldn't
buy them on magical.
the only one I wouldn't is Telekine.
Actually, yeah, Telkins.
'Cause I think
Yeah,
Telekines is
Telkins is
actually
A.
just the stats and the passive are actually so sick on it that it maybe makes some things like more like Alquang Jungle was pretty sick with it, and probably throw it in if you, it might warrant playing some ADC magical ADCs in some scenarios, but all the other ones I agree. These rings are just kind of. I mean, if we were in a magical meta because like Freya, Kronos, and Soul were just like broken in ADC for whatever reason, then these items would be more valuable. But since there's not really any characters in the game right now that are actually making use of these items besides maybe Alquang Jungle, um, then yeah, I think that they're just kind of B tier. They're not horrible items. It's just they're niche because the meta's niche for them. So, and then Lotus Crown. I mean, Lotus Crown's pretty sick. Honestly, I think probably around A plus. Just kind of makes if you're playing a healer, whether it's Hell, Chang'e, Terra, some characters like that, Afro. Just any character that can kind of keep it the passive up a lot is really good, or especially characters that can heal in an AoE and give it to everybody, basically like an AoE, like an aura item, almost like a Thieves, but give you 20 of each prot. This is a really good item for healers. And healers are really relevant. If healers weren't as relevant, then this item would probably go down to even like B tier. But since they are so relevant, I think Lotus Crown's pretty good. Maybe you could throw it in A just because it's more niche. You're not really buying this on any other character besides a healer. So I think for that reason, maybe A, but definitely strong on those healers right now.
Yeah, Lotus Crown. I mean, this like if you're playing a healer, you probably always have this item. I think. The stats are like they're nice for the price. I think the price might be what's kind of carrying this item. Like it's so cheap for all the effects it gives.
Yeah.
And it covers a lot of aspects too. Like it's the prots. It does give like some power, and it gives MP5, and then it also is like covering that support option. So, I mean, yeah, I would say A plus, I guess, but since it's only on healers, I mean, you could lower it down. You have to.
I think it's just so strong. We should throw it in A plus. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It is very strong for sure.
Combined, especially if you combine it with like a Gauntlet of Thieves and then Aura, maybe you have Sentinel's Embrace and other stuff. They're just get pretty tanky in a Deathball comp. And then Erendite, what do you think?
Erendite. Well, I actually really like the passive of Erendite. First of all, like I think until this item, there was no stealth detection in the game, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is like the
Besides in like
first
kits,
time that
but
we have. Yeah, but this is like the first time an item actually detects stealth. Um, the stats are amazing. It's
mhm.
like you get a lot of power and CDR. It's in my mind like you always pick between this and like Heartseeker or Bloodforge on a jungler.
Mhm.
It's like it's those three items that are really strong, all pretty high up the list as well, and you just want to have them. I mean, you could probably have all three as well. And I mean, this item does a really good job. Uh, Hunting down stealth characters actually like when you play against Morrigan or Ao Kwong and you're a jungler, you're trying to 1v1 an Ao Kwong and you ult and you can actually just kill them.
Yeah.
I think it enables like for some plays that other items don't, which is pretty unique.
Yeah, the movement speed is definitely noticeable as well that you get when chasing people down. And honestly, now that we're getting to them, I think all of these the like ultimate based items, I think they're the Arthurian items, have been really cool and like really good for the game. I would say that Erendite specifically A plus. Maybe you could argue S because I do think it's viable in jungle and solo, and it's just actually pretty strong there. But I'd say A plus because I don't think it's like that insane. If we're talking about the current fail not, it'd probably be S plus or S tier, but I think after the changes, I think maybe even like B or C tier. I don't know. I think this item's gonna fall off very hard, and just the fact that it only has 10% crit on it now, except for like when you get the passive, is really bad for crit builds. And I think if you're ever gonna build crit, it's gonna be replaced now by like a rage or I don't know, maybe something else like a malice deathbringer. I think.
I actually think we might be overreacting to the nerfs.
Really?
Like, I mean, yeah, honestly, it might be a little bit of an overreaction. Like, yeah, sure, the crit's going down by a lot, but it still has pen, it still has 20% CDR, it still has good power, and the passive is stronger.
That's true.
So I wouldn't put it as far as B tier. I mean, you might not see it as much, obviously, but I still think it's gonna be pretty strong. I like the item though. I think it's funny to see like random crits when you're playing a solo laner. It's
It
like
is funny.
have your best at cat crit someone like it's pretty funny.
Yeah, or have
So
like a minion
I like
crit
the
you.
item. I don't like it that they're killing it. Well, I mean, I guess they're not really killing it, but I don't want to see this item get too nerfed. You know, like if anything, so like somehow compensate in terms of the stats. I guess.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is that maybe the build combination is going to be a little bit more hard to work with, just because Berserker is getting a good bit of a nerf, and like Spectral is also getting buffs, so there's kind of like a combination of things happening to it. But yeah, I guess the item itself isn't actually going down too much. So it depends on how ADCs like work out their builds and how worried they are about their DPS, precious DPS. What do you think? Staff of Mirrodin, cool item.
I actually really love this item, dude. It's way too fun, I think, but I don't think it's that good though. I think the stats are like thing is I agree with the A tier by the way because I think the stats are pretty ridiculous. It's basically Spear of Deso in terms of stats, but rather than giving flat pen, it's percent pen.
Yeah,
So I think just the space stats alone, you could kind of argue it being pretty high up the list. Um, but there's a lot of weird, really weird interactions with kits, and the problem I think a lot of people have been complaining about is that the first spell is weaker.
yeah.
And a lot of the times, like the second spell won't be as well timed, right? So like your first spell being weaker is kind of awkward. I think the passive overall is very good, and the item overall is very good, but just like slightly more towards the feel bad side because of like the interactions between ults and the cooldowns, how they work, or just simply the fact that your first ability is weaker rather than the second one.
Yeah, the passive a lot of times is hard to make work, and it's kind of like this cool item that you can maybe throw into some solo builds, and I don't know. So let's say the quintessential idea that people come up with is like Geb with it, and just like double shielding people is pretty cool. It has that benefit, and the base stats are actually pretty good, especially for mage mid laners. Base stats aren't amazing for solo laners. I mean, they do give you a lot. It does give you a lot of damage, so that's nice. But it's just like a pretty greedy item for them. You could throw this into some support builds, actually. I think support's probably the role that you see it the most in, just because they can go like a Thebes straight into Staff of Mirrodin and feel actually not too bad about it. Just kind of can get pretty greedy, but Yeah, I'd say just like a decent item, just an A tier. If the passive were a little bit better as far as like the first ability not being the one reduced, probably would see it in a lot more mage builds, but a bit lower. All of these items are really cool though. And moving on to Pridwin, Pridwin I would throw in S. Very very good in support,
Yep.
very good in solo. The passive is really good and comes in clutch for actually killing people. It actually kind of makes you tanky because the shield. The base stats aren't amazing for 2,400 gold. You only get 30 of each prot and 20% CDR. Not that crazy, but what is crazy is the passive is just so valuable on pretty much. You could build this on almost every tank. There's some exceptions maybe, but for the most part, I think Pridwin's just a really really good tank item. Like I said earlier with Void Shield, kind of one of the few tank items in the game that you just feel really good building. Like you don't feel like it's really doing anything bad for you.
Do you know what's crazy? You actually have a really good soul lane build over there in S tier. You have Void Shield, Talisman, Mail of Renewal with the chains,
Oh
Mantle,
my,
Pridwin. Like,
yeah, yeah,
actually pretty good.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, Pridwin, super strong item. I think definitely the best of the bunch, like of the Arturian items. This is actually the item that got nerfed the most too, because initially it was like just absurd. I think it had like 50 prots or something initially. Now it's at 30, but it's still very very good. And it fills in like that perfect role of you needing more damage and more tankiness, but also like please give me more CDR.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just like the perfect fit into solo lane builds, I think, and it's very strong and it does its job very well.
and it's really fun. That's the most
Oh,
important
and it's
part.
very fun, of course.
And then moving on to our last two items are going to be the masks. These are like the step brothers to the Arthurian items, where they were supposed to be like this
Oh,
cool game changing metas, which kind of, I mean, Fridwin, Staff of Mirrodin, Erendite, like they've all kind of actually manipulated the meta in like good ways. And been good for the game. But ever since they nerfed these items, and ever since they kind of introduced them, um, just to like say in general, like we talked about it, I think in our last video, the part one, having items that make you like forego something or sacrifice something is kind of a gimmicky concept in Smite, and I think that's part of the reason these items just don't really work.
yeah, it's yeah. I thought it was at least a little bit more interesting when they didn't have a role restriction. Like
Yeah,
when you could buy Rangdas on anyone, but you're just way like slower. I think it was at the time. Like maybe if you were slower or take more damage, but you did more damage. Like at least let everyone buy it.
yeah,
So you can maybe come up with some cool stuff, but only having to like Alono's mask is like the item that every tank dreams of, but it's for like squishies. And
yeah.
then Rangda's mask, like maybe damage dealers want it, but nope, only tanks.
Yeah,
So I think the restrictions are really killing the fun part of it, and not just the fun part of it, just like the item in general, like has no real use anymore because of the restrictions to it. Mm, I would have liked to seen these items in their like original form, but I mean, I guess it is what it is. At this point, if they remove these items, I don't think anybody would even notice.
yeah, it's really troll too, because on Lona, with Lona's mask, you're putting in characters that you actually don't want to have reduced damage on, like assassins or like I don't know, maybe you're playing like a hunter support or something. You actually don't want to have reduced damage because the damage that you do have with a bruiser build is pretty nice on those characters. And then Rang does the extra damage that you take on like tanks, like guardians or warriors, actually makes you so useless because on all of these characters you're in the middle of the fight, and even though you maybe do a little bit more damage, you're actually just sacrificing your entire kit basically to be doing a little bit more damage, but also just getting one shot. So the ideas behind them were cool, but they just really haven't worked out in the long term. And the reason I throw Lona's mask in B is just because I do think it does make you kind of tanky. And there is like I don't know, this niche scenarios like Circuit support where if you buy this, you actually are going to be pretty dang hard to kill. So I think it's a little bit more valuable than Ring does. I think Ring does is honestly shit tier. The fact that you just get one shot while also maybe doing a bit more damage is just not worth it. Especially after they removed the flat pen. It literally only gives you 100 magical power now. It gives you less power than Ratatouille, and it is supposed to be like a pure damage item. So it's just a little bit weird, I think, in that regard for the base stats.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I agree with the placement of both. By the way, like Lonos Mask, like you can actually get some kind of fun builds going, I guess. Like if you go full mitigation on an assassin solo, like say you play Ravan and you have every mitigation item ever,
Yeah.
and then you ult in and you just don't take any damage. Like, there's like some fun stuff you could do with it, but for Rangdas, dude, Jesus Christ, man, like
It's not even fun.
I don't even know if I yeah, it's not even fun. Like I've never seen this item outside of like people trolling. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's lit. It's so bad only when you troll you buy it.
Yeah.
And even when you troll, you'd rather have a different item because it's more fun to have a different item.
Yeah, you can still one-shot people with other items while also not yourself getting like completely one-shot, but you know, it is what it is, and I hope they kind of rework these items or maybe try and do something else with them. But all these other items are the starter items from last year. Like I said at the beginning of the video, this is from season 7. There's only updated item is dominance and all the starter items, which we already talked about. So that is actually going to be the end of the item tier list. We do a quick overview. What do you think, Deathwalker? Do we have anything that we want to change or maybe manipulate a little bit? I think.
And wait 1 sec. I mean, I'm gonna look through it like so hard right now, dude.
I maybe we throw Ninja Tabi into S. The only thing maybe I think we could do so far that I've noticed. But I think for the most part, pretty good.
I think we just about got it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people are happy. People are gonna be happy with the placements. I'm happy with the placements at least. Like I don't see anything really out of place.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a tier list is just kind of an excuse to talk about items. So even though like stone cutting probably could be argued it's S, and maybe you
actually
could
say, wait. One item. I think maybe demonic and A.
Okay, yeah. Works on objectives, and if you are playing magical ADC, kind of it's pretty mandatory, I'd say.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Now my soul can rest.
Nice.
I think we've got it.
Okay, and yeah, like I said, it's just like an excuse for us to talk about everything and give you guys a nice long discussion about items and how they are in the current meta. So, like always, if you disagree with a certain placement, you think Voidstone is horrible and it should be B, or maybe you're having a lot of success with Crusher first item instead of, I don't know, whatever you're going in your builds, then feel free to keep going it. But these are our opinions on the items right now, and hopefully you guys learned something from the video. Deathwalker, as always, we're gonna put Deathwalker's link in the description. You got any other comments or shout outs before we end?
I just have a real quick suggestion that I just want to see people say in the comments after watching this video that they have built Talaria boots, a Midgardian Mail, Book of the Dead, Gem of Isolation, and Rangda's Mask on Kobrakan, and it worked so well.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see in the comments. I just want to see all the shit items just get covered in one go, and it worked.
There'll be plenty of that. Somebody's going to screenshot this and post it to Reddit, and they're going to be like, what the hell? Tank boots in S+ tier? I prefer Talaria boots on my supports, and I win every single one of my gold rank games. No, but yeah. So we'll probably have plenty of those comments. So yeah, check out Deathwalker's YouTube in the description, of course, and hopefully you guys learned something and found the video entertaining. If you stuck through the entire thing and listened to this whole thing, then props to you. That's you're an honorable person. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.